The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
TV party tonight! What? TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuit!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Blinson and Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast, TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich, the Czar, as I've been told I am called. And joining me tonight first is the President of the United States of America, Dorian Price. How do you do, sir?
Actually, I probably shouldn't do that. Hey, there was somebody else who did that. I'm doing great, your great czarship. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm feeling quite Russian. Speaking of Russian, the Prime Minister of Canada, Andrew Graham, how do you do, sir?
I'm a little offended we're being conflated with Russia right now, but
It's like
Welcome
every GH summit where the president leans over to the prime minister of Canada. Dude, let's just get through this. It's like 2 hours and it's an open bar. Just 2 hours, we're done.
that's had
All
interesting
right.
consequences in the past, actually.
Fair point.
And leading the great secessionary states of Appalachia, the rebel
That's right.
rouser himself, Mr. Politics, Jesse
Yep.
Starcher. How do you do, sir?
Oh my goodness. I'm glad to be back here for season 2. I cannot wait to discuss what happens in the West Wing.
How far into season 3 are you now, sir?
We just finished season 2 today. I
Okay.
started the very next episode, which I just learned is a kind of like an interstitial between season 2 and season 3. It's not canonical according to the Wikipedia.
Isaac
but,
and Ishmael, yeah, we'll talk about that
yeah.
later.
yeah. So, but yeah, we're just one. So I'm not as far as I was last time.
Okay, let's get into business here. I did not complete the homework. I get partial credit. I got all the way up through episode 14. I have not watched. All right. Some of us have things to do, sir.
Give him a hard time.
I have like 12 movies to watch for Black History Month. I got to take my kids to the movies. It's dark out and there are wolves after me. Hey, fuck you.
Hey,
This is
half
me.
the time, if we don't do our homework for the regular Damn You Hollywood or anything else, you are right up our asses.
Shame,
So
shame,
this is-
shame.
I believe it is do as I say, not as I do.
And Mark, from what I can tell, I mean, you spent a significant amount of time planning like the West Wing themed, centered Ainsley Hayes / Dr. Bartlett burlesque show while we're at it. So
Yes. Last night I was at a Star Wars burlesque show, and next week I'm going to a West Wing burlesque show.
Wow.
I don't know you're planning one.
Sorry.
It's crazy.
All right.
Run that up a flagpole and salute it.
Show you my flagpole. Listen to me.
Whoa.
All right. So
yeah, that's the wrong tier, guys.
let's get into the last bit of season 1 into season 2. When we last left our heroes, they were being shot at by Nazis. And that's where we left season 2. It picks up. President Bartlet, I believe, got nicked. But Josh got himself shot right in the chest, collapsed lung and everything, nearly dies. We get a lot of, in these first couple episodes, we get a lot of like what all went on that night, but also it kept doing flashbacks to how his cabinet came together, who he wanted to be, like how he ended up running for president, how he selected the people in his cabinet, how then they selected their deputies. So there's how Donna and Josh met, and they are just dreamy together. So we'll talk about that. I'll weigh in first, and then we'll go around the thing. I liked how the season opened. I think everyone kind of dealing with being shot at what's the Dual Hill? His name again is Charlie, right?
Charlie, yep.
Charlie.
Yeah. Charlie having to be told that they were shooting at you, and they were shooting at you because you were dating the president's daughter, who happens to be white, and guess what? You're not. And him having to shoulder that, I think, was all really interesting stuff. I laughed at the flashback to how Janel Moloney's character came to be the press secretary, where she gets fired from her job as the marketing for movies, and then she's going to talk to Richard Schiff's character and immediately falls in the pool. They really do ride the line with her about like being like a comedic character and being a serious character. And I have to say, this season overall, because they do so much stuff with the Ainsley character, who we'll talk about in a little bit, they make her less the butt of jokes. I mean, there's the occasional pair of turkeys in the office, but for the most part, they lay off of her more this season than they did the previous season. I'll start with Jesse, then Dorian, then Andrew. What do you think of these first couple episodes dealing with the shooting?
Yeah, we got finished with our podcast, and we did not jump into that season finale. And you talk about a cliffhanger. I mean, it was a cliffhanger. So getting our first episode and watching the fallout of what happens, and watching, Josh is, his life is on the line. I think one of the things that kind of stood out to me the most, like in that first episode, is just like them having to break it to Donna, because she runs into the hospital, and
you read my mind. The stuff with Donna is both sad and phenomenal.
Right. You watch, she's running in there. She's worried about the president, and then she has to find out about Josh, which was just heartbreaking. But, of course,
first instinct is there anything I can do for the president? Is there anything he needs?
Right. And so, the good thing is he pulls through. The backstory episode, which I think was most of episode 2, that was fun. Yeah. Watching how all these people came together and got behind the president, and you got to pull all this team that we've spent the whole first season with. We get to learn how they came together and became a team, which was really cool. So I really enjoyed that. But there's my thoughts on the first 2.
Go ahead, Dorian.
These episodes are ones that even if I'm doing a binge watch, or even if I'm not doing a binge watch, I'm just in a West Wing mood, at the risk of sounding morbid, that I will always go back to, just because they are so fantastically written and so fantastically acted. And I'm gonna do this quick so it doesn't become a full Dorian Price director commentary on these 2 episodes. This will be 4 hours. Get comfy. No, it's I loved how the end of season 1 ended. Now, I was lucky, and I know most of the people around the table here did not watch this show the first run. So it wasn't a situation where it's like, well, crap, I have to wait another 8 months to find out what happened, you bastard.
Right.
You could just go end next episode. But I loved how, again, as a filmmaker, the shots are going off. You see the Secret Service grabbing the president like they would, and you don't know what's getting hit. It goes black, and you're still hearing gunshots and sirens. You're like, and I talked a lot in the last episode of season 1 how much I love President Bartlet, and again, I would vote for him if he were a real person. I loved him in the car. His first worry is not, oh my God, did I get shot? Is, oh my God, where's my daughter?
Right.
My daughter is throwing up in the back seat of the, and then when the Secret Service man has his hand bust, it's like, Coop, we got to go to the hospital. Sir, I've got to put you in the White House. This is not something we discussed. And he just has this throw his hands up moment of oh yeah, no, my daughter's throwing up in the car behind us. You're losing blood by the liter. God knows how many broken bones you've got in your hand. But yes, let's make sure I'm tucked into bed. Of course, that's the moment we find out that he's been shot.
I got to interject here.
Ooh, yeah.
The role of the Secret Service guy has such a great line delivery and performance in that scene, because his job is to take care of the president. And the president is, just as an aside, how they deal with masculinity in this show is, I love it. The way that Josh, Rob Lowe's character, Richard Schiff, they, there's definitely a sense of what is manliness, what is not manliness. And they're manly men, and they're able to get there without necessarily being, physical specimens. This is manly men of the mind. Yeah. And then so you have Martin Sheen's character, the president, very much the same thing of, I'm a man and I can deal, and I am worried about everything else going on around me. I'm worried about my daughter. I'm worried about you. And the Secret Service guy is, look, I get all that. No one's taking away your fucking masculinity, sir, but shut the fuck up. I have to do my job.
I gotta do my job.
It is so important that I do my job. You don't
Do I
understand.
walk into the Oval Office and tell you what to sign? No, now sit the hell
Please
down.
stop being the president for just a moment and shut the fuck up and let me do my job. It is just like the respect and frustration he has going on, that like conflict of emotions is chef's kiss. It's just perfect. Go ahead, Dorian.
Well, yeah, I want to bounce directly off of, because you kind of took the words out of my mouth in a way as well. I love that there's small character moments, is that you feel the Secret Service agent cares about this president. He actually likes this president, and as a Secret Service man, you don't have to. You just have to do your job and take the bullet if it comes. But like when he pulls his hand up and sees the blood, there's genuine worry of like, oh no, please God, not him. Anyone else? Me. That's my job. Shoot me. The following minutes are obviously just a cacophony of chaos. I love the daughter getting there and their conversation of like, are you, Dad, are you okay? Are you lying? Yes, because I wanted reporters to say I was brave. Well, I'm being wheeled in, and like Stalker Channing showing up, like, Dad's okay. You sure? Yeah, he's making jokes. Good ones? No. Okay, that's the my word. We're good. He's making shitty jokes. We're gonna be fine. But no, the part that, and I'm sorry if I'm not sorry, but I'm not trying to be dramatic about this. The part that always makes me tear up is Richard Schiff looking for everybody. Well, everybody's, Rob Lowe and
right.
It's everyone's kind of reeling from this. CJ stands up and sees where she was and where that bullet went right through. It's such a great shot. I'm sorry, just kind of a craft review in itself. Really quickly, is that like that was where my head was, and now it's, oh my God. And that thing with Rob Lowe, which we'll find out later, was more than it was. But like Richard Schiff trying to find Josh, and Josh just, he's hit. And it was the beauty in that scene. And again, I don't want to get into like a full 30-minute breakdown, but I love the fact that the first season really showed us that these people had worked together for over a year, and they did care about each other, even if they annoyed each other. Richard Schiff's performance, where he just vapor locks when he sees Josh, and he's I need an ambulance. I'm sorry, I keep quoting the lines, but just to give the audience that has also watched the show some context. The second episode, I'm going to jump to the second episode. And going back to President Bartlet, I loved so much how they made us love him in the first season. His good parts, his bad parts, his in the middle parts. He's the people's president. He's somebody, again, that's why, like I said in the first season, there's those t-shirts that every year will say Bartlet for president. Martin Sheen will have been dead for 50 years. It'll still be like Bartlet for president, 2277. His vice president will be Captain James T. Kirk, because now we're in that timeline. But how we meet Bartlet's in the flashbacks as not the guy we know already in season, even in the first episode of season 1. He's surly. He's not good at this yet. And it is because of his team, it's because of the West Wing that he becomes better. But yeah, you talked about her CJ falling into the pool. I'm so sorry. I never remember that actor's name. And I love
Allison Janney.
Allison Janney. Thank you.
I said Janel Moloney before I meant Allison Janney.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I also have a roommate named Allison, so it throws me off. And I'm like, that's not right. But like her falling in the pool is great. One of the best moments is I think that Josh and Sam they just kind of rule these episodes. Their friendship, so understated but so perfect at the same time. But the scene that, if you take all the drama away, that I would still keep, and I will wrap up with this, is the scene where President Bartlet comes to the airport and sits down with Josh.
Yeah.
When he has to go home, because it's like, yeah, no, send him home. His dad's dead. It's like, yeah, but I'm here to help President Bartlet. And he just sits with him, like, Josh is like, Governor, you need to get on the plane. Yeah, we've got a couple minutes, and you get to see what I was talking about with the character arc. That is, to me, if you have A, B, and C is where we meet President Bartlet in episode 1 of the first season. This moment with Josh is where we see the middle part of that arc, where he's finally started to trust his people. He's without, again, turning this into a 4-hour podcast. He's been bitching about them in the flashbacks. He didn't want to hire Toby. And again, for people who haven't seen this and you're watching this and you're going to go watch it after we're done talking about it, again, those moments are just it's gold TV. Again, as Mark said, it's chef's kiss.
I want to link what you're talking about and then toss it to Andrew. Feel free to piggyback on this or go into your own thing, Andrew. But one of the things I picked up about this season, it started a little bit with last season, but this season it really rings true. And it starts with Leo, with what's the actor's name?
John Spencer.
Thank you. Yeah,
that's what Andrew and I are here for. Who is this person? It's this guy. Thank you.
I'm not good with names. John Spencer's character, where, and you'll see it a little bit later when Josh has his meltdown. The reverence he has for the office of the presidency, not just the man. Yes, that's his best friend. Yes, he respects Martin Sheen's character, but there is, and this kind of goes to the Ainsley stuff too. I think what gets lost now in modern culture, if I may quick sidebar and get on a soapbox, is proper respect and reverence for positions that deserve them. We tend to have kind of a cultural relativism about how we look at people, how we look at positions. And here we have, just 20 years ago, a man saying the office of the presidency is important and governmental service in the service of the presidency is an honor. It's not just important, it's an honor. And it should be treated as such, and it should be treated seriously.
There's a line, just real quick, there's a line
Yeah.
that comes in later that Spencer says it directly to the vice president when they're having an argument. It's like, me and my buddy? Yeah, you are speaking about the president of the United States of America. Yes, I know that. Then refer to him as such.
Right. He does that a lot, especially in season 2. And I want to link that to the flashbacks, where it's easy to be, especially now, it's easy to be cynical. It's easy to be disengaged with modern politics. It's easy to just kind of throw your hands up and say, nothing I do matters. Everything will always be the same. It's always the rich, powerful, versus the little guy. And then here you have the characters in Josh and Sam, who's Rob Lowe, and they're both in high-paying, very powerful jobs, and they leave it to go into the service of the president at the time, the governor who's running for president, because they believe in something bigger than themselves. Which, if there's anything else about this show that draws me in and keeps me watching, it's that they are all working towards an ideal. It's half of what drives the Robert Schiff character fucking crazy in most episodes, because he is the one trying to provide a moral compass for this entire group. Yes, we are Democrats. This is our time to try to make things as right as we can in the system that we're working in. And I kind of love that. So I wanted to talk about that because it deals in those first couple of episodes. Why are they all running for him? It's not as cynical as, well, this will give me, if I work for the president and he gets elected, then I get a big time governmental job, and then maybe I can run for something. It's no, there's an ideal here. This guy aligns with that ideal. I believe in something greater than myself, and so I'm going to put my energy into this. And it even trickles down into how Donna and Josh meet. When Donna says, I have absolutely no experience, not enough education, and I'm not right for this job, but I believe in what we're doing here, and I believe in you, and if you let me work for you, I will ascend to the abilities this position demands. And Josh gives her a chance, and lo and behold, we have this Sam and Diane will they, won't they thing going on all throughout season 2. So with that, let me throw it over to you, Andrew. I've said a lot. Dorian said a lot. Jesse is quietly rousing the troops in Appalachia to take over the United States. What do you want to respond to?
Jesse, could you knock on the door first before you guys busted in? We really just had it painted, and I'm going to feel bad about those painters if you guys kick it in and it's still wet.
When you hear the yeehaws, get ready. Just
fair enough. No, I'll be at Camp David by that point.
To the FBI person listening to this, Jesse's not really leading revolution. Jesse doesn't leave his house.
Yeah. No.
And also to the
Wait, there's
FBI
still
person
people who work at
listening
the
to this,
FBI?
I'm not actually the president of the United States. If you didn't already catch that. Poor guys like, say what?
You guys threw a lot of stuff out there. I'm going to start just with a quick kind of that guy acknowledgement to Michael O'Neill, who plays Secret Service agent Ron Butterfield. He is a constant recurring character throughout this entire series, and he is gold every time. He's one of those really unique actors in terms of the fact that he kind of he's kind of in the back pocket of two of the more unique writers in terms of delivery and pacing and things like that, because he can work both with Aaron Sorkin and he's also done a lot of work with David Mamet as well, which is kind of an interesting. Those are two kind of very different speech styles, and he works well with both of them.
And Andrew, can I bring up really quickly? He's also what I would call a John Wayne kind of person. He kind of plays the same character every time, but you love it each time he does it because there's enough change to it. I just wanted to throw that out. Please continue.
Oh, definitely. I think maybe I'll start with picking up on a couple of Mark's points. So I think it doesn't get articulated for a few seasons later, and I'm not gonna go to spoiler territory, but I am gonna say there's a lot of conversations around season 6 around your guy, and it's that whole drive of finding who's your guy, and I'll just use that line from John Spencer that he's going to use: who's the smartest, most capable, most honorable man you know. And that's the guy that you're going to follow through this entire process of going through the primaries, going through everything like this. And it's not like they had set up Jed Bartlet as being a sure thing at this point. He was kind of the scrappy underdog, and he's just like, no, go listen to this guy because he's right. And that's what kind of hooks everybody into kind of this entire process going forward.
There is that whole scene with the milk, the dairy people, where they're expecting him to do what every other politician does, and bounce and pivot and stuff like that. And he's like, nope.
No, Roger, you good.
I screwed you.
Yep.
And everyone's like,
yeah, exactly. And I think, and I want to actually take that into the conversation around, picking back up on Dorian's point around Bartlet's personality, because I think this gets into a really common, looking at this from the Aaron Sorkin point of view, this gets into a really common part of Aaron's character, or Aaron's kind of character archetypes. And that's like the lead who's outwardly very affable, very smart, very articulate. I'll just be blunt, but also kind of a dick as well. Like, I mean, we're definitely going to get into that in the newsroom quite a bit. And you definitely get to see it with Bartlet here. And there's definitely a level of comfort with his new people, but there is that conflict of, it's like, my affability versus some of my own personal nature. And I mean, we start with it here, but it also runs into seeds that we start talking about all through this season and very much into season 3.
May I cut in with this because I'm smart and I need to tell people that? Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. So, so as you were talking, I was thinking about candidate Bartlet, not President Bartlet, because President Bartlet was clearly modeled after Bill Clinton with some other stuff thrown in there.
A lot of Kennedy.
Yeah, a lot of JFK. I was about to say,
But I was thinking about candidate Bartlet, and and that sort of plain spoken, I'm going to give it to you, honest and raw. Let Bartlet be Bartlet. And I'm trying to think of like who did they model him as a candidate after? And I know I goof on this all the time because of the stupid Iowa caucus speech that he gives. I actually just played that for my son recently, because I said something and I was like, hey, we're going to go to this way. We're going to do this. We're going to go, yeah! My son's like, what the fuck? Where did you get that from?
Oh, Howard Dean.
Howard Dean.
That was 3 years too early.
Hang on.
Yep.
Hang on. So, first of all, that is like one of my favorite political moments in modern history is the Howard Dean Iowa caucus law speech, which, for context, for those that don't know, he was set to win the Iowa caucus and came in like 4th. He came in behind Dick Gephardt. Fucking Dorian came in ahead of Dick Gephardt.
I wasn't even born.
So, like that's how bad that was. And it was one of these deals where Howard Dean was the soup du jour of the time, and he had one of the first guys to really use the internet for campaign funding, and made the frontrunner John Kerry look like an also-ran, and then he proceeds to blow the Iowa caucus pretty badly. So then he has this speech, and he sounds fucking unhinged. And he makes the "yah" sound at the end of it. So I was thinking, yeah. So I was thinking,
oh shit, Jesse and his people are busting the doors. I heard the noise. Go.
Watching the flashback episodes, it really felt like they had modeled President candidate Bartlet after, to an extent, after Howard Dean. So I asked my lab assistant Fancy, I named the AI Fancy.
Ooh, nice.
And Fancy, don't let me down.
And I said, President Bartlet as a candidate running for president is an analog for who in real life. And it said a whole bunch of him as president, but Bartlet, however, as candidate for president, Bartlet more closely resembles Al Gore and Paul Wellstone with some elements of Howard Dean thrown in.
None of that timeline works though.
It says even though
AI doesn't care about timelines.
No.
even though Dean's national prominence came later, it actually says Howard Dean pre-Scream. Though Dean's rise happened after Bartlet's character was created, his blend of New England governance and focus on healthcare and a more aggressive debate style reflects aspects of how Bartlet ran his campaign against John Hoynes. All right, so
I feel so bad. I have no idea who Howard Dean is.
please look up the Iowa caucus speech when we're done
You'll
here.
know the clip when you see it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I always thought it was a little bit more Jimmy Carter.
What year did this speech come out in?
This was the 2004 election. So it's it was the 2004 Iowa caucus. A raucous caucus, as it were. All right, Andrew. Anything else about these first couple episodes? I had to tell everyone about my Howard Dean thing. So I am so smart. I am so smart.
SMRT. Probably those first two episodes. Shadow of Two Gunmen. Yeah, not a lot more to say on that one. I will do a quick shout out to the follow-up episode, the midterms, which kind of covers the next 6 months of the show in terms of Josh healing, them going through the midterms. I think a lot of people dealing with what happened. Again, focusing a little bit on Charlie and what he's been going through with a little bit of his obvious guilt complex.
Charlie gets some great lines this season, by the way.
Oh yeah. And the funny part is and again, I picked this up to the official podcast of West Wing Weekly. Aaron Sorkin's come out and said that honestly, he always wanted to write more for Charlie, but he's also always the stuff that ended up being left on the cutting room floor.
I don't doubt that.
One of my real kind of like every time I watch The West Wing, the one episode I wish they had done a full day in the life of Charlie. Because that would have been kind of interesting to see how that entire thing goes. They do parts of it, but I think any Charlie focus is always good. And again, he always has the killer lines.
So I don't want to talk about her yet. Hang on. I don't want to talk about her yet. And everyone need to hold their horses. But his line about whether or not they should hire Ainsley is like, yes, I'm told the Republicans are the party of inclusion. I fucking did a spit take, and I wasn't even drinking anything. I was like,
watch every Democrat go. Crap.
Go ahead, Dorian.
No, I was just gonna say honestly, I have to agree with Andrew. And that'd be interesting to see because they keep talking about a reboot of it, or not a reboot, but like a continuation, like a lot of shows are doing. There's been some hints that Charlie would be either running for president or already be president as kind of a connection to the old crew coming into the new.
I think it would be fun to see him as an analog for Barack Obama, and kind of tackle it from that angle.
Oh, don't worry, we're going to get our Obama analog.
Don't get ahead of the story. We're going to get there in a few more seasons. But no, like honestly, I was going to say to Andrew's thing just very quickly, and that's I'm just going to cut in. It's like that would have used Aaron Sorkin's walk and talk so well because Charlie's constantly having to move, so that like constant camera motion, it might have made some people sick, but it's like that's how much this guy has to move every day.
Right. I want to link this to a later episode, and then we're going to move on from this entirely. But as a mental health person, I have to talk about this. So Josh was shot in the gut. He had a collapsed lung. He almost died. They fixed him. They gave him new lungs. They used $300 million to make him a new man, and now he's part cyborg. Anyway, he's up and running again. And later on in the season, he has a bad day. He is snapping at people. He is impatient, short-tempered. He is having a rough time. And then in the grand finale of bad mistakes and unprofessional behavior of that day, he as professionally as one can, mouths off at the president.
Yeah.
You do not raise your voice to the president. Not that he's the great and powerful Oz, but again, propriety is the thing, people. Just as it is on this show. And so Bartlet is saying, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And Josh is like, don't do that. And Bartlet is Bartlet about it. And at some point, and you see this a little bit earlier, even with the hiring of Ainsley, where you can see like Leo is just like, please don't make me do this. And it's at some point you have to say, yes, Mr. President, and be done with this. That is the job. Mm-hmm. And because Josh is having Josh has PTSD from having been shot like anyone would. And PTSD affects people differently based on one's own resiliency and the impact of the actual event. He is able to work for a while, but he is starting to the ends are starting to become frayed. and he is having difficulties. And so we get to this point with Bartlet where Bartlet's like, no, I think we should do it this way. And Josh just starts screaming at him. And finally, Leo has to get him out of the room and push him into the pool. It is that event that sends him to the trauma specialist, Andrew. And I don't like the way mental health providers are written on screen. I don't like them in movies. I don't like them in TV shows. I tend to think they write the way mental health professionals actually behave. I don't think it's written well. More often than not, is that 100%? No, I've seen some good ones. But more often than not, I don't think people really understand how a mental health provider actually does their job. This trauma specialist, I think they nailed.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He was very not kind. It felt like. I mean, he was very upfront and blunt.
The word you're looking for is confrontational.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me tell you how in my nigh on 20 years of being a mental health professional, there are times I have to do very confrontational reality testing. You have to hold people accountable. You have to hold their feet to the fire. It is not all passive reflective listening. Sometimes you have to kind of get in someone's face. And where Josh is spending the entire episode, and I love this because he spends most of the episode being difficult, and as the actor, I can't remember the actor's name, but
Adam Arkin.
Adam Arkin, is just being cute and difficult and everything else, and then they finally have their breakthrough, and he realizes what's that it's the music that's the trigger because it reminds him of the sirens. The sirens are prompting the flashbacks
of his
which
sister,
is common with PTSD and all of that. And so we have this breakthrough, and Josh is like, okay, well, what do we do now? He's like, well, you need therapy. We're going to do this, this, and this, and you're going to be better. And then okay, and we're done now. Session over. And Josh goes, but I want more. He spent the entire time fighting this, however long it was. And then when they had their breakthrough and we finally have our moment and we know the direction we're going to go, and he's like, but how about more therapy? I'll buy you a pizza. And they're like, stop it. No more for you. We're done here.
But what if I put my hand through another window? Yeah, don't do that.
For me, who's a very harsh critic of these things, I thought that was picture perfect. I have no notes. Well, I love that episode.
Oh yeah, it's a great episode.
I really think that they eased him up to that. They didn't just have him get out of the hospital and Hulk smash.
Yeah.
Even in I think it is episode 3, when it's either 3 or 4. I know Andrew will correct me if I'm wrong, but when he's on the phone with CJ and she's like, "Okay, do you have it?" Yes, Caltech psychics, physicists, Caltech physicists, and then she screws it up on purpose and goes, "I'm sorry, I think that was supposed to be physicists." And he's just like, bang, bang, bang.
That was good shit.
That shows the friendship, but it also as he comes back. To my point, it was they eased him up to a shattering point, not just like a lot of shows will do. It's well, they got shot 2 episodes ago, so
not just shows. I'm thinking in real life. PTSD is over, is a range. It's not an incident. I don't have. It's not represented well either in modern fiction. The fact you can live for a long time with PTSD and function. Go about your day, and it really won't affect you until something does. It's not like you're just
one thing.
Yeah, it's not just I have PTSD now and that's it. I'm helpless.
There was a Canadian general who was present for the genocide in Rwanda, and his trigger was stacked wood.
Yeah,
it literally reminded him of seeing people stacked
bodies. Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Nothing like a mass grave to fucking, just give you some PTSD.
Well, it's been 30 years on, he's still fighting it.
I'm sure.
As a quick sidebar to that, Andrew, they actually make a reference to that actual person. That general, I cannot remember his name.
Romeo Dallaire.
But it's in Hotel Rwanda. They have somebody turn and look, and it's only a 5-second shot of the bodies being stacked and them driving by. But they did that as a salute to him, as hey, this guy went through some shit. Give him a break.
Hotel Rwanda is a great movie. Andrew, you, then Jesse, then Dorian. Your response to the PTSD episode. Go.
I don't have a lot to say beyond what you've said because I think it's a pretty stellar episode. I think the interaction, the performance, the writing between Brad Whitford and Adam Arkin is just absolutely crackerjack. It's kind of funny. Adam Arkin shows up on a few Sorkin shows, and they never give him a main line or a main role or anything like that. But he's one of those guys who comes in, really kind of gets it, goes with the flow really well, but also changes up the energy a little bit in the right way.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, you get all the stacking of the musical cues and stuff like that. By the way, oh my God, I can't tell you how bad of an idea it is to have two bagpipers in an enclosed space. I love bagpipe music.
Have you been the meat in the bag?
Have you lived through hearing two bagpipers in an enclosed space?
Quiet on the set. Hey, Andrew, have you been the meat in a bagpipe? Have you been the meat in a bagpipe sandwich? It should not have taken me 3 tries to get that out. This is a stupid joke, but yeah.
I've gone to Highland Games. I've marched with Highland bands.
So you have been the meat in a bagpipe sandwich. Got it.
I've spent a significant amount of time around. I tried to learn the bagpipes at one point. I love bagpipes.
Now that is a threesome I want to be in. Me between two guys playing a bagpipe.
No, you don't. This is the voice of experience. No, you don't.
If my brother-in-law hadn't separated his shoulder, I would have been piped down the aisle at my wedding. But anyway.
Perfect.
What was the other thing I want to say? The Yo-Yo Ma scene is fantastic.
Yeah.
Apparently, this was one of those things where it's like Yo-Yo Ma was an enormous fan of the show. Came on and was like the biggest fanboy. He's like, oh, here, everyone come over here and take a photo with my 300-year-old Stradivarius.
That's like you.
All right. Jesse, your thoughts on PTSD and mental illness from your vast experience.
Oh, my vast experience. Yeah. So we all know that, I mean, Josh is probably one of the more likable characters on this show, and it's tough to see him suffer, especially what he's going through. And you know what happened to him was traumatic. So watching him try to deal with this and then confront the fact that, okay, there is something wrong with me. The first question I think that comes out of his mouth is like, is that something that doesn't sound like something somebody working for the president can have?
Yeah. And the palpable fear in his voice. I'm going to lose my job over this.
Right. Like, you know, this is his
the second time in early episodes of each season. Gonna lose your job in season 1.
Right. I was gonna say, is this like an ongoing thing where every season Josh is on the verge of losing his job?
Josh, I think he doesn't really run into another big issue like this until I want to say mid to late season 5.
Okay, that's good. Jesse. That's good. But yeah, you know, watching him have to deal with this, have to deal with the fact that he, you know, this is his livelihood. This is what he wants to do. He wants to serve the president. This is like his dream job, and it could potentially be taken from him. You know, his life was almost taken from him. All he wanted to do is get right back into it
through no fault of his own because of a mental illness that was no fault of his own.
Right, and that's heartbreaking. But you know, it's great to see him work through this, and it's a real good statement of like, hey, get help if you need it, because you may not know that you need it. And Josh didn't probably realize that he needed help until somebody said, okay, you got to talk to this person. He was probably aware of his irrational actions, but he couldn't control them because of the condition itself. So, but yeah, I think it's a great statement. You know, that episode was really good. I enjoyed like learning what people have to go through. And just like you said, the confrontational aspect of that therapist did take me by surprise, because I was like, this guy's a jerk. But yeah, he's also
some of us have to be.
Yeah, you also get the sense that that's just one of his gears.
Right, right. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, Dorian.
That arc of this season was very important to me. For people who watched or big fans of the show, you know, when we did the Kubrick review, I talked about my own trauma of being raped. And though I've worked through a lot of it, there is still things that at the slightest moment will trigger me, and I will become a gooball. I mean, I don't mean to make light of it or make it funny, but it's just that the bones don't work, the muscles don't work. It's just over to the side, and I'm crying or I'm screaming. nightmares are still horrible over something that, like, a smell at dinner, a dinner that happened 4 hours ago, will just like that. So, and again, I'm not equating like, oh, well, you got shot and collapsed a lung and almost died. Well, I got raped. So I feel you, my dude. That it is different, but trauma is trauma. And trying to quantify it is insane. So I loved how they handled it. Alan Arkin's another one of those. I just love him showing up. Like when you see he's the therapist, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. Sit back, take us away, Alan.
Adam,
yeah, Alan's the dad, Adam's the son. My bad.
Yep.
But no, I loved how they handled it. I loved how he got worse and worse and worse, and finally just broke.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't break in what I'm going to call the Goodwill Hunting way of the whole, like, it's not your fault. I know. It's not your fault. Now you, man. Now you. That is constantly done. But Mark, I want to agree with you that mental illness is not handled well in movies. Mental illness in many cases, and this is the terrifying thing about it, very much in my opinion, is that it can be so subtle that you don't see it until it's almost too late.
Yeah.
It's almost like a James Bond movie. The bomb is already counted down to 5, 4, 3. Oh, there's a problem.
Yeah, I was thinking like quicksand. Mental illness is a lot like quicksand. Like you don't realize that you're sinking in your neck deep until you are.
And again, without taking this into my own little private soapbox, personally, I think the writers took their time and the directors worked really well with the actors. The actors brought the best. Like if I were going to show someone what PTSD looks like without putting them through like a whole bunch of like mental health breakdown videos, I would probably show them these episodes. Like, this is what happens slowly but surely over time. And actually there's a friend of mine right now that's dealing with a situation she's trying to get out of, and I was actually just thinking about this today because I knew these episodes were going to come up. I was warning her, it's like, do not feel bad in about 6 months when all this comes back, hitting you, and, try to find the inner peace if you can, but just go get help. It's out there. And that was one thing I was, my final thought is I was very proud that they didn't try to drag this out into some dramatic arc of, and I love Roger Corman movies, but for our movie fans out there, that Roger Corman, Vincent Price level of insanity, like Fall of the House of Usher, they didn't do that. Would have been so easy to do because it's like, hey, it's going to pad the runtime. Fuck it. We don't have to write half the shit. Bradley Whitford wanders through downtown DC all, hey, just watch these Vincent Price movies and just do that. They took the time to really focus and deal with this situation. That made me very, very happy.
And there's even a callback to it later in a future episode where actually Adam Arkin shows up and they actually ask how he's doing. I won't get into why he's there, but he does come back.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking to it as he assumes he's talking to Josh again.
Mm-hmm.
And there's obviously been evidence that Josh has been kind of continuing to see another therapist more locally and stuff like that. And even that line from Adam Arkin near the end of it where it's like, no, Josh, you're way too easy of a case for me. Yep.
Right.
The other thing I realized just talking to is because we're already talking about, I mean, my God, John Spencer is so good in these episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Like just him being the counselor, the mentor, the father figure in some elements. I mean,
sense of assurance. As long as I have a job here, you'll have a job.
Yeah.
Well, guy falls into a hole, which becomes a touch point for the rest of this series. Like he's so good. He's so reassuring. He's the guy you want to have in your back.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So to kind of change gears here, let's talk about Hot Blonde, shall we? Hubba hubba.
For the record, for anyone listening, I had to tell Mark, can you keep this classy, man?
Mrs. Lanningham, would you please make sure the First Lady isn't listening in while we have this conversation? Thank you.
They introduce Ainsley Haynes. And I actually have, she has a Wikipedia page, a character has a Wikipedia page. Ainsley Haynes is a character played by Emily Proctor. She primarily appears in the second and third seasons for about 12 episodes. She's the associate White House counsel under the show's president, who is, again,
Josiah
Martin
Bartlet.
Sheen. Yeah. Reception for Ainsley has ranged from mixed to positive. She is characterized as smart, flirtatious, also vulnerable to sexism from other characters. When she's introduced, she is on a talk show where she is debating Rob Lowe's character, and they are talking about schools, and she is treated as a lightweight, and then, as they say in the show, beats the shit out of him.
I'm actually shocked, Mark, that since you wanted to bring this up, you didn't bring in some of your WWE like SmackDown friends to be like, "Let me break down how this went for you." So Ainsley goes in for the elbow drop.
She dropped it on him.
Yeah, she well, again, she has this very cornpoke kind of really heavy Southern accent. She is a dainty, good-looking blonde, and because the show, I think, deals appropriately with positive elements of masculinity, but there are some also elements of toxic masculinity here too. There's some sexism, and this is the early 2000s, and they're looking at her going, "All right, child, you're not quite the Black Widow character from Captain America: Brave New World, but I'm sure you're just the daintiest of girls, and you're never going to be able to hold up against the big Rob Lowe character." And then she does it. And it's a big joke the next day at work, and and everyone's giving
Get popcorn instead of getting beaten up by a girl.
yeah, and they're giving Rob Lowe the business about it, and then Bartlett says, "I want to hire her," and Leo just looks at him and is like, "But for why?" And his line about is this one of those things you're going to forget about by lunch? And he's like, "I'm not. I'm serious." And when cutting through all the Sorkinisms, which can be a little thick at times. My God, it's like a tough steak. The heart and soul of the conversation between Leo and her is it is good to serve. This isn't about political parties. This is you're talented. He sees that he wants talented people to work for him. You should want to work for him because it is good and godly to serve. And
the president likes people who disagrees with him.
Yeah, and she arrives at that point by the end of the episode, and so she goes to work for him. I had a thought, and I'm going to start with you, Jesse, then Dorian, then Andrew again. When I looked at her, I was like, this has got to be an amalgamation of like Ann Coulter and Laura Ingraham, but Ann Coulter is a wasp. Like, there's a joke about her from Family Guy that Republicans, use her vagina as a place to store things they need to keep cold.
Oh man,
I'm not responsible for that. It's a Family Guy joke.
No, welcome to the things that I had tried to forget, and then it just came slamming back into the front of my brain.
I will never forget that. I don't need to go on a huge thing here, but in the interest of full disclosure, I have read almost all of Ann Coulter's books. They're hilarious comedy books. If you like political comedy, she's funny. I used to enjoy watching her. She's funny on purpose, unlike other politicians who write books that it's like, oh,
were you trying to? Oh no, you're not trying to be funny. Sorry.
Yeah,
that's not. I
used to enjoy her on the shows. I think she lost her patience with the world by the end of the Bush term, and then definitely going into the Trump years. I think she's like, I've had it. There's nothing more I can add to this. But I've enjoyed her books. I don't always agree with Ann Coulter. Like I don't always agree with every conservative book or every conservative I've seen on television. But I like Ann Coulter, and I think she can hold her own. She doesn't need me to defend her. But I do think she was one of the people who got bullied because she dared to not be anything but a progressive. And the other one that I think that Ainsley is also an amalgamation of is Laura Ingraham, whose radio show I used to listen to. And if you think Ann Coulter's a bit extreme, Laura Ingraham's the diet version. She was also very conservative. She definitely had her moments and interesting things to say, but she was the less hostile version of Ann Coulter. So I threw this into Fancy, Jesse.
Yeah, Fancy.
Oh, Fancy. And Fancy said
Fancy
that she is a combination of Ari Fleischer, Peggy Noonan, Ann Coulter, and Laura Ingraham. And although she differs from these figures, she ultimately respects and admires the Bartlet administration despite her ideological disagreements. She was likely more of an idealized version of what Aaron Sorkin wished for in a conservative intellectual, someone who could argue their beliefs would still work in good faith in a nonpartisan manner. Yeah, she gets a lot of comedy relief stuff going on where they just do dumb shit to her, like they put her in the basement. There's the bit where she gets to meet the president and she's dancing in a bathrobe. There's a lot of fun stuff they do with her. Her and Donna, the Battle of the Blondes. That's a really funny bit, as Donna is obviously bored out of her mind and is trying to bond with Ainsley, and Ainsley's doing like real work for Rob Lowe. So I love the Ainsley character. I know, Jesse, for you to have referred to her as yourself as Ainsley's boyfriend, I guess she tickled your fancy too, which is weird because she's not like a leggy, raven-haired Italian. Like, what the fuck,
point.
Jesse?
Good point.
He likes the chick from Laguna Coil.
Yeah.
Like, what do you? I don't understand what's happening,
Nothing wrong with
Jesse.
that. She's pretty.
I didn't realize that in Jesse's fantasy girl department he was poly. Jesus Christ! Jesse and his array of fantasy women. Go on, speak on it, Jesse.
Oh my goodness, Ainsley Haynes. Oh, so okay. Bringing her in here, the first thing that you notice is that she's going to go into this. She's immediately like she's the enemy because we got Democrats, we got Republicans.
Look at Allison Janney's response to her screaming. Like,
no.
What do you think? I wouldn't have a problem with it.
What? No.
So that's what I loved about bringing her in, and then by the end of that episode, she's in love with the idea of actually working in the White House more than she is, obviously she still has her ideals, but she now has the opportunity when she sits down with her friends at dinner and they're like, you told them, I think they're pretty much like, you told them to go screw, right? And she's like, why would I do that? And they started making fun of them. And she's like, don't do that. These people matter. These people are doing things that matter. And she was about ready to walk away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she finally is like, okay, you know what? I am taking this job. I am going to do this. So, I applaud her and I appreciate her for that. Watching her throughout this season, she only has a few, she's got a few episodes that she's showing up in, but yeah, her interaction with trying to impress the president twice and failing twice miserably.
Why are you in the closet? Because I had to pee. I'm not allowed to smoke in here, but you could be in the closet. Great.
This starts a wonderful tradition of people getting the yips whenever they have to meet the president.
Is it okay?
Like it
great.
now starts a whole thing where it's like anytime any recurring character has to meet the president, they totally trip over themselves.
That's great.
Which I think, from what I understand, is not an unrealistic thing.
Yeah,
sure.
And watching her and Sam like battle throughout this, it's fun to watch these beliefs, these ideals kind of get laid out there in front. Like, okay, this is how somebody that is not part of your party thinks, and they do a great job of trying to justify why they believe in what they believe. So it's, a lot of it is like, I'm so glad to kind of see the two parties work together and her kind of making coming to the understanding, like, I could do something good here, even though I'm in the basement. I could try and do something good here. And, she's absolutely stunning. Anyway, but yeah,
she's pretty.
She's a pretty girl. But yeah, there you go. That's my thoughts on Ainsley.
You want to talk about the pretty girl, Dorian?
Okay, so for me, this was weird, and I know I've said this several times, but just to reiterate it, anyone who's just tuning in, I don't obviously see this show until it's on streaming. I'm born in 1997, so this show doesn't. This show is coming out when I'm 2. This is not something that 2-year-old me is bouncing in his plaything. Watch West Wing. Watch West Wing.
Talk about healthcare.
Father, because they call me Father. Yes. Could we watch a show about healthcare? No, watch your Star Wars Episode 1 and shut the fuck up, kid. Which actually talks about politics too, so that was a bad joke. Anyways, no. So for me, Emily Proctor, who plays Ainsley Haynes, I saw her first in CSI Miami as Callie Duquesne, who is the firearms expert. So when I see this show and she pops in, and I'm well aware at this point, I've been in the entertainment industry for back and forth, the behind the scenes, stuff like that. By the time I see the show, I'm aware that actors play other roles. But like, she's a Republican going into these Democrats. Like, dude, she's got guns like everywhere. You do not want to fight her. She will shoot you. It's kind of one of those like the hot girl who you know she's crazy enough to probably kill you, but you're still probably gonna fuck her because you know what? What a way to go out. Which is probably what Jesse's like. Well, damn, dude, if you're gonna take all my notes, just
Throw 'em away.
just email them to you. Fuck. But no, in all seriousness, though, I really enjoyed this character because I was like, wow, we're bringing a Republican in. Now, I was raised by my legal guardians very. I've talked about on the shows before. Mark, I'm going to screw up what you always call them, Mr. and Mrs. Christian Pants or something like that.
Churchy McGee.
Churchy McGee. I always forget that.
Christian.
Just Christian Pants.
But now they're Mr. and Mrs. Christian Pants.
But no, them bringing in a Republican in this show that's very staunchly Democrat, I was like, okay, how's this going to go? Is it really we're making the Disney princess looking girl the villain of this season? But no, I was, and I know Andrew and I will talk about it here in probably just a few minutes. Is I loved how when she did stand up for what was right, and when she's already working for them, and she gets smacked down. I love that our main cast came to her protection,
Yes.
not because she's a dainty little blonde girl, but because it was the right thing to do.
Right.
I will spoil the line, and I'm sure again Andrew and I will bat this back and forth, badminton style. But when a character walks into the office of the two people that have screwed with Ainsley, and go, when I say something to someone else, I sign it, and they hold up a big thing.
You're fired.
That's plotter that says you're fired, and the character name, and so that really cemented her as a really great character in all this. She had new and different ideas, which will be echoed, strangely enough. And I want to shoot this to you, Andrew, because I know two of them will not get this. I felt that Ainsley's character crawled, so Alan Alda's character in later seasons could run.
That's not a bad analogy, actually. That's a good way of coming about. I mean, they kind of have a couple of dry runs with this too. I mean, there's a couple more actually male Republican lawyers that show up. Again, I won't go heavily into spoilers, but they kind of dot these guys throughout where it's like they're Republicans, but they're also, and again, this is Aaron Sorkin being fanciful in some ways. We're saying it's like, no matter what the party is, you still have a code of honor, you still have a code of conduct, everything along that line. But I mean, I don't think that's
inaccurate. I have a question. Does John LaRoquette come back? Because
no, he doesn't.
The episode where they hire her.
I love John LaRoquette.
Okay,
no,
I gotta address that in a minute.
Mark, there's a whole episode where he gets moved down to being a judge on a court that usually works at night.
None
of that's true. There's no crossover.
He gets replaced by
for a moment. He gets nominated for a judge, does he?
He actually gets replaced by Oliver Platt and another fantastic character.
Oh yeah.
That and then they make a joke. No, you're the fourth White House counsel we've had so far, and we've been here for 2 years.
Yeah, John
LaRoquette. The president does not like lawyers.
John LaRoquette's role in that episode, where the first thing she's like, "Hey, this is your new assistant counsel. You're an idiot." Like, my own heart. If you got nothing else there, Dorian, I'm gonna
actually, you did. I didn't have anything else until you said a man after my own heart. I want, since all of us have now watched. Well, I mean, I know Mark didn't get to finish the second season. Can we all disagree if we were actually casting this show that Mark is Toby?
Ooh, a little bit.
He's got to be a
no. It's not the bald thing. It's not that. It's the attitude. It's the I know this is right, and you've now pissed me off enough that I'm going to go on a rant for the next 5 minutes. What about threatening the president? What about this? What about that? Toby, there is no decency in this country anymore.
Toby has like this reserved.
Oh God, I think I broke Andrew.
No, it's an interesting question.
He has this like, I was just gonna say, he's got this reserved like quietness, and he's thinking about something, and something is bothering him.
I'm Toby
until he finally is just like when he gets, he tries to get his point out, and he's real quiet about it at first.
You're
then it's just
not
like
Toby with self-immolation.
Yeah.
You're Toby after about 4 drinks.
Toby's somebody I'm going to talk about in a little later on here, but yeah.
Let's talk about Ainsley there, Andrew.
Yeah, Ainsley. I mean, Emily Proctor does it so well. Talking a little bit around the genesis of this character. We had Mandy in the first season, who we don't know what happened to her.
She went to Mandyland, as I've been told.
She went to
Did we-
Mandyland. So
Just real quick before we jump off of that, Danny, is he gone?
he'll come
No,
back.
he comes back.
Okay, all right, all
He
right.
comes
All right.
back
Continue.
quite a bit. But
What you talk about, like with Mandy, that's not knowing what happened to Mandy. It's like that joke I hear about Friends all the time. It's like not Friends, sorry, Big Bang Theory, where it's like every time Howard had a girlfriend, they just vanished. They were never talked about again. So it's like, is Howard actually a serial killer who just like murdered them?
It's funny. We've watched a little bit of Young Sheldon, and it's always like, I watch that show, and it's like, I'd like to see the sequel to this show that isn't The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, the Big Bang Theory was fine, you nerd. It was a perfectly
Sorry,
anyway,
lovely show.
All right, okay. Back on
Mr. Prime
topic.
Minister, I apologize. Please continue.
Back on topic. So, there's a certain kind of sarcastic, mean but not mean quality to a lot of Sorkin's characters, and I think they didn't quite get that balance right with Mandy, but they definitely nailed it with Ainsley Hayes and with Emily Proctor's portrayal. I know there was some worry about how she could pull off the role because Sorkin writes in a voice of a very northeastern or very kind of coastal character. So having somebody with a pretty noticeable accent was a bit of a concern, but obviously she absolutely nailed it. I think her acting ability and her chemistry with all the characters, including Sam, I think is pretty dynamite. One of the ongoing pieces of speculation on the West Wing Weekly was, wait a second, so did Sam and Ainsley ever sleep together?
By the way, Sam and Leo's daughter, when she shows up early on in the season and she's dating the hockey player, the way she delivers that line, and we are having lots of sex. I fucking died. It's a perfectly delivered line. What a bratty moment.
Yeah, but I mean, I think she's great. I mean, even when talking about the second episode, they're on. Surely to their credit, when you talk about the episode dealing with the two guys from the speechwriter's office who were being dicks, like when you look at the way she approached that, it's like, hey, guess what? You're currently almost being held in contempt of Congress, but I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to give it to you in a very open, constructive way. And like you said, we're actually going to just fix this really easily and pick up a couple of points. Like, if I ever have a lawyer come to see me about a problem and they're talking like that, I would probably be feeling a whole lot better.
Sure.
And it kind of sets up on kind of how instinctively negative people address her at the start. And again, it goes back to they have her back at the end of the day about the way those guys behave, things like that. And just kind of how quickly she's identified as being one of them.
I want to talk briefly about Stockard Channing as a way to get into the stuff towards the end of the season, which I'm going to have to lean on you guys to lead the discussion. But first, there's a bit where they send Charlie to talk to Stockard Channing about a check that was never cashed. And she immediately she immediately goes to her Southern accent. And I think Stockard Channing, yelling at Charlie in her Southern accent was hilarious to me. And oh, look, it's Rizzo's back. Hey, it's Rizzo.
That's the worst thing I could do.
I could stay home I still love Stockard Channing in this, and her having those moments, those husband and wife moments with Bartlet are some of the best stuff of the season.
Yep.
One of the things she says to him, and she says it a couple of times in just the episodes that I saw, was the deal is, we had a deal. And it's something along the lines of about not telling the world about his MS and running for president. I straighten me out here, Andrew, in 10 words or less. Was the deal you're only going to serve one term? You're not going to run for a second term? And
that's exactly it.
Your MS. Okay. That's what I thought. And so what sets this whole chain of events in motion is when he gives his third State of the Union address. And there are things about the speech that have changed so significantly as to signal his running for a second term, which he did not discuss with her and flies in the face of everything that they have talked about. And as a wife, as any wife would be, when you've gone back on your word, she's pissed.
She's mad.
Now, and he's Bartlet. He's somebody who they've just now figured out how to be president and get shit done. And most people who run for office, who run for the presidency, have a second term in mind. That just kind of goes with the territory. By the end of that second term, everyone wants to die, and nobody wants to be president anymore. I know everyone's just like, "Oh, Trump's going to run for a third term." No, he's not. First of all, he'll probably be dead. But even if he's not, by the end of almost a decade in the White House, have you ever seen pictures of Barack Obama?
Right.
Yep.
He walked in the office and he looked like 1978 Michael Jackson, and by the end of office, looked like Michael Jackson 2000. Ugh. Just, same thing with Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, walked in and he was a big dude, but he was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and had, a sparkle in his eye. And by the time he got out of that White House, he looked like the Crypt Keeper.
I mean, it's just it is nonstop. One of my notes in here is like, does anybody ever sleep?
Nope.
Because people are going to it's 2:00 or it's 1:30, Mr. President. Okay, he's going to bed. He's got to get up the next morning. Nobody sleeps.
Yeah, I remember reading one of the Bob Woodward books when he was I think it was Bush at War. He was following George Bush around. Bush started his day at like 4:00 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, can you imagine? So anyway, I wanted to kind of talk about that as like my final talking point, and then I'll give it to you guys for last licks. The MS storyline, Andrew. Take it away.
Okay, wow, because I think this is going right into a couple of different meaty things here.
Yeah.
I almost just want to start off by saying, I think, again, going back to a point I made during our first review, we really get again into that whole conversation, even coming a little bit of that difference from The Crown, where it's like the weight of this office.
Mm-hmm.
But in that case, it's just simply foisted upon weight. You get this dual pull where it's like, one, there's a massive weight of this office. Two, I bloody well want it.
Right.
So it's got this entire kind of element of, we want to do this because of ego, because of service, because I think I can fix things. Because at the end of the day, anybody who wants to be the president, the prime minister, the whatever, has to have an incredibly high opinion of themselves to say that I'm somebody who's capable enough to walk into this situation and fix it.
I believe I can help.
Yeah, exactly. And well, not only I can help, but I'm not always motivated by, it was like, God has given me the opportunity to help.
Yeah.
And there's a degree of kind of destiny. And again, that gets into some stuff down the line. I think probably the thing I want to talk about on some level is basically from about episode, we could even go as far as, Bartlet's third State of the Union, but I'd probably pick something along the lines of either Ellie, or maybe really, if we want to get into this storyline, probably 17 people forward, is that we are on fire for the next 2.5 seasons.
Yeah.
Like from 17 people to basically the end of season 4, there is just nothing but strikes being thrown. It's solid stuff. And this really gets into the whole thing. And I don't think it sounds like you probably didn't get to 17 people, which is a phenomenal episode. And it really starts to also get into, and this is why I was hemming and hawing about Toby, is that's really a very Toby-focused episode. That's where he finds out that Bartlet does have MS. And remember, this is somebody who always assumed that Bartlet was going for another term, and then it kind of starts the dominoes falling towards Two Cathedrals of them then talking to Oliver Platt and them talking to the rest of the staff members and everything like that. But I want to key in on particularly on 17 people, is that once you start there, it also starts to pick up a new character trait for Toby, which is this very high level of self-righteousness and almost purity about some of his actions. On some level, you've talked about him as the conscience, but on some level, he's beyond that as well. Mm-hmm. He goes beyond that in some ways. And again, that goes to where he goes down the line with his character. But, really and that's why I said there's not a lot of policy I want to talk about. It's kind of the nature of the beast of these politics, where it's like,
really, because I could spend the next hour talking about the missile shield stuff.
Oh yeah, we could definitely talk about that. Was a Marbury episode too, if I remember right.
Uh-huh.
Hell yeah,
yes, sir.
Lord John Marbury.
Yeah, but
he thinks I'm the butler. Well, so did I for the first 2 weeks.
Anything Marbury is always great, but you get into this whole question, this whole conflict of, it's like his his sense of service, his duty to his wife, his duty to his staff, to tell him that I have been sick with this. And on some level, his duty to the people to say that when he went into this original election to say that I had this health condition, it can be mitigated, it can be managed, but this should be known about going forward. And I mean, obviously, the last 4 years, there's been a lot of conversations around really getting into what the actual health of the president is.
Right.
And how capable they all are of managing their offices and things along that line.
Executing the office of the president of the United States.
Exactly.
Like exact term they keep using like every freaking other week.
Oh, yeah. And they even talk about it like, I mean, because it gets brought in because they start talking about some of the tobacco lawsuits or their version of the tobacco lawsuits that were going on at the time. It's like perpetrating a fraud against the people of the United States for not telling them this. And again, going back to the back and forth of, do I tell them? Do I not? Does this mean that I can still run forward? I mean, we've got that great scene between Josh and Joey trying to get data, trying to get polling figured out, all the war room decision making on this, like all that, how the sausage is made kind of stuff. I think it's really fascinating in this part of the season, like just in terms of the political management, the communications management, the political arts, and how they get into that is really, really interesting to me. And again, that there's moral questions of it's like, should I have been upfront about this? Should I have not? Should people have been told about this? And how does that affect my prospects going forward? I still have a lot to do. And again, maybe we'll save a talk about Two Cathedrals for later. But it's just this fascinating discussion for these last 5 or 6 episodes of the season that I think are just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Watching Toby with that ball.
Yes. The ball becomes a...
Yeah. And watching him he knows something's going on.
Yep. And
he starts to figure it out and he finally, I think he approaches John Spencer's character.
Yep,
Leo. And he knows something's going on. And the righteousness is a great way of putting it, because he is trying to make them understand the decisions that you are making are going to affect everybody, and you have to, as the president of the United States, be upfront with your staff. It should be something that they should be aware of, and possibly the American people as well.
Look at something as brief as and as small as the bit with the environmental people.
Yes.
And they choose to do a drop in instead of the entirety of Sam's speech, and they don't tell Sam about it because Sam will raise objections and it will cause another sidebar, and they just don't want to be bothered at that point. They need to get this done. This is a done deal. And Sam going, this isn't about a differentiation in policy from what I think is a good idea. This was feeling like I'm not part of the team. Like I got left out of something. That happens a lot in just a little bit of the show I've seen, where there's CJ. That happens to CJ a lot, where she's always like, I should be included in these things. And there's very much Leo's opinion of everyone knows what they need to know when they need to know it, and not a moment before. And that really bothers some of these people who feel like, am I a part of this or aren't I? I cut you off, Jesse, but I wanted to throw in there.
Oh, you're fine. Go ahead there, POTUS.
Thank you. And thank you for not kicking down the door yet. No, I honestly was just going to agree with both of you. I was just going to make a point, and Mark kind of made it. I just want to cement underneath it is that the reason I think this is a great episode for Toby, and Andrew said it himself earlier, was this is the first time Toby is left out.
That probably burns him.
Everyone else. Sorry, I thought you were high-fiving me for a second. I was like,
yeah, motherfucker!
You know it. You know your West Wing shit, bro. But no, it's like
missile defense. Hell yeah! Sorry. Keep going.
Gang. But no, it's with like you, Mark, brought up that CJ had been left out. It's like, do you think this is something I should have known? CJ, we know when we know, or even like when Sam's thing comes up, and it's like, and Joshua, I will be in to see you very soon. What did I do? And then Toby's in trouble too, and it's like, oh no, it's when Toby's in trouble. It's like, what did I do this morning? All you had to do was wake up. Or sorry, excuse me, take 2. What did I do this morning? All you had to do was get out of bed. And so yeah, I'm agreeing. It's like watching Toby kind of crumble a little bit but come out of it even a little bit more righteous, because like this is the first time I've been left out. I've been told absolutely everything. I am, the communications director. I have to know all this shit.
I don't think anyone knew, if I remember correctly from the first season. Obviously his wife knew, but they didn't tell Leo. They told Leo when he got sick with the flu.
Because Leo's like, you would not, when he's talking to Abby, Sagar Channing's character is like, you would not have come all this way back for just the flu. Come on, tell me what's going on. And that's when she breaks like, he has MS. And it's like, well, fuck,
Right. And then like, why didn't you tell me? He's like, because I wanted to be president. And Leo's like, I would have gotten you there regardless. Which I think is interesting, because it does. Look, what we're dancing around, and I'll just say it outright, and I don't think we're dancing around it because it's a touchy subject. I don't think anyone has been as blunt as I'm about to be. The office of the presidency is a very serious thing, and at any given time, the world might be ending, and you're going to have to make some pretty important decisions that may in fact cost the lives of millions of people. Not being sick with what amounts to a brain degeneration disease is important, and many people would assume that someone who may possibly have a degenerative brain disease shouldn't be in the office of the presidency. It's the reason why Biden didn't do a second term, because the man has developed dementia, among other things.
It also comes back to something you said at the very start of this whole podcast for this season, Mark, is the masculinity.
Right.
Why didn't you tell me? We would have figured it out, but I wanted to be president. They wouldn't have let me.
Right.
It's that terror from people who were in their. Now, I've always assumed Bartlet to be in his like early 50s to mid 50s.
Yeah.
They never nailed down an age, so that's why I'm kind of ballparking this. But so you take 50 years away from the 90s, and where they're raised, and obviously two cathedrals, which we'll get to in just a second. Obviously, we see some flashbacks of Bartlet's younger life. I'm seeing some like late 40s, early 50s. 1940s, 1950s, time period.
It's 60s.
I'm sorry?
Early 60s.
Early 60s, thank you. I remembered that there was a title card at the bottom that said what time period it was, and I could not remember it, and I should have made a note. Thank you.
It was 1905. Sorry.
This is why this motherfucker runs Canada. Excuse me. But it's like, I can understand Bartlet in a point of view of how his father raised him. Again, what we get to at the season finale of season 2, why he wouldn't tell anyone is because like, nope, I'm good. I can do this. And it is very much, all four of us are boys. I know what I mean, men, but we're all boys. We will all be boys. Again, he's Ainsley's boyfriend. That's his he's going, oh, let's talk about the party girl. We're all still boys. There's that idea that is stuck in our heads that if we can't pull through something, that we're weak.
Okay, real quick, I've told the story before, so I will tell it very quickly here. A little over a year ago, I went to a 90s cover band show at the House of Blues in Orlando with my very leggy, very hot blonde concert-going friend. And while we were at this show with a lot of normies, we were dancing and having a grand old time, and we were kind of surrounded by a group of young, hot girls. And then there's me, Methuselah, who who throws his back out singing Guns N' Roses' True Story. So I am
Welcome to the jungle.
Yeah. Facts can confirm. So it is cold. It is January. I am still, I am not in like the world's greatest shape. I'm still struggling from the years of recovering from cancer and chemotherapy. And I'm at this show, and I do not want to look to the point that you're making and what I'm trying to get at. Do not want to look weak in front of the hot girls. Okay? And during Enter Sandman, I think it was, I went, eggs and and now
I'm not laughing at your pain. I'm just imagining that I know.
It's fine. Like everything, the kidneys, the ribs, just everything blew out on me. And I pulled muscles I don't have. And you could see, and Cobra Commander, as Jesse knows, that's her name, Cobra Commander. So Cobra Commander looks at me, sees the pain and anxiety in my eyes, and goes, "Are you okay?" And because I will not admit defeat, I will not show that I am hurt, because I want to run for president, just like Bartlet. I go, "I'm fine," and I proceed to push my way to the rail, where I held myself up and danced for the rest of the evening because I will not admit defeat. I am a man. Ow.
Hands up, chin down, all in.
That's right.
Like down on your mouth guard.
Yes. So to the point, yes. For those of us who take our masculinity seriously, we will not show pain in the face of hot girls or presidencies.
Well, and you will not show pain if you think you're letting people down.
Yes, to be more serious about it.
That was actually where I was going, and I'm glad you told the story. I was like, it's like it's not just presidencies; it's letting someone down, feel like. And again, it's sadly how the world works too.
Yeah.
Is that we are looked at by the telescope of ages long before all of us, and still tried to be held to that standard. And as human beings, genitalia and how you were biologically assigned completely aside, we got to destroy that telescope. I'm not doing another presidential speech. I swear to God, I'll save that to the end.
Last week I was in the pool with my 3-year-old, and we were doing the whole throw him up in the air thing. And he's 30 pounds. Now I spend my time throwing a kettlebell around, so I know what I can do. But it's like, if he asks for more, I'm going to keep throwing that kid up in the air as long as he needs to. If I got to get 40 reps in of throwing this child up in the air, then guess what? I'm going to do that.
Right.
One, because I don't want to let him down, but it's all, there is that degree of like,
Andrew, why are you lying on a pile of cold beers? Don't worry about it. Does the kid need to be thrown again?
No, that's how he like turns to the side and goes, Andrew, why are you laying on a pile of cold beers? Because that is how I roll.
Tecate is a wonderful beer. I won't deny that.
Anything else about the MS thing? If not, we're gonna do last licks, and then I know Jesse has got to have a list or something.
Yeah, I've got probably one other thing I want to bring up on that, because I think somebody said it, and the line was in there about Toby talking about his self-righteous streak, and I think the president said something along the lines of him. Are you mad that you hadn't found out about it yet, or are you mad that you didn't find out about it first?
Yeah,
like going to that whole leave it out line.
That wanting to be the prettiest girl in the eyes of your lover is a very strong feeling, and when you find out that you're not, it hurts like hell.
Yeah. Do we want to talk Two Cathedrals, the finale, really quick?
Please.
Go hit it.
I mean, I think that one is, again, that's a high mark of the episode.
Spoilers.
We again have,
we just see Mark disappear, and like 45 minutes later, the rest of us are gone.
We find out that the president is going to give a sit-down interview. He's basically going to come clean to the nation about the entire thing.
Right.
There's going to be a press conference where he basically announces what his next steps are and everything like that. And we find out prior to that his decision is that this will only be a single term for him. So that's where we set it up. We also find out that Mrs. Landingham, his secretary, dies during a car wreck. And during this time, they go back and forth with some cutbacks to when he originally met her and how she formed a little bit of his drive forward to, fight the good fight, deal with injustices and everything like that. There's also this absolutely killer scene with Latin where Bartlet just bitches out God.
Yes, it is powerful.
Go look at the translation.
I was waiting for this.
So I'm telling my buddies on another podcast that, hey, I'm going to be doing the whole West Wing series. And Derry is like, that is one of my favorite series of all time. And he says, my favorite episode of any television series is Two Cathedrals.
Yep. It's a solid episode.
I was like, okay, well, so I sent him a message today when I was getting ready to watch it, because I was expecting, some good stuff, and it delivered. It really did. It was one of the more powerful things. Just watching watching the president walk through a church and just give God his thoughts, and smoking the cigarette in the church and then throwing it on the ground and then stepping on it and walking out. I was like, wow, it was powerful. It was great.
In Latin, he's an educated
Yeah.
man. How do I hate him?
I actually have the translation here for, again, obviously the audience will be able to watch
yes.
the show themselves. And again, I'm not going to quote it Latin to English. I'm just going to say it in English. Thank you, Lord. Am I to believe these things from a righteous God, a just God, a wise God? To hell with your punishments. I was your servant, your messenger on earth. I did my duty. To hell with your punishments and to hell with you.
Man.
Takes the cigarette, throws it down. You get Hoynes.
There is some Catholic rage there that I appreciate.
You get Hoynes was some. I looked at my wife. I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's done. He's done." Mark, did you read like what happened in these episodes? I know you talked about. Okay, all right. So I mean, really, the setup to all this is Bartlett talking to Miss Lanningham and saying, because she bought a car, and by the middle of the episode, they're giving her a hard time because she didn't take a guy with her to the car lot. And you know, the president finally is like, hey, why don't you bring the car back later tonight? And I want to kick the tires. And he's like, okay. Or she's like, sure. So
it smacks back to that flashback when she's having issues with her car.
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah. So anyway, on her way back, she gets killed by a drunk driver.
Yeah. And I think he was going to come clean to her about the whole situation at that point.
Oh, yeah. But I remember like sitting there thinking how guilty he must feel because she was not, you know, that wasn't the plan, but the president asked her to come back. He felt probably partly responsible. And we've seen earlier, especially in like season 1, how when he feels that something... the Situation Room, where he was wanting to wipe them off the face of the earth. We know that he has a vengeful side, and boy, was he can get mad.
My God, his line with the Colombians, where there's like, you can't do this, and Leo's like, I fought a jungle war, I don't want to fight another jungle war, and that face, like, what's the point of being a superpower anymore?
Well, and Jesse, actually, to your point, a better scene is the state dinner one. It's when Mrs. Bartlett says to CJ, you know, when CJ asks, you know, in season 1 why he's upset, it's because he can't stop a tropical storm. He can't save an entire battle carrier.
You know, at the end of that episode last season, I was hoping that these guys would pull through the storm. I was like, certainly they're not going to capsize. And then we find out this season that they are dead.
Yeah. It's like you wiped out an entire carrier group of mine. And
well,
in that episode, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
It was the ship that he was talking to that sank.
Yeah.
It's
like, do you know what that ship does? It goes around and fixes the other ship and carries the mail. It's all it can do.
Man, powerful stuff.
Yep. Actually, thinking about it, the Colombian thing, like his rant after that one, where it's like, what? I just lost 9 guys because of a change of a tactic 2 steps ahead of, hey, look, your shoe's untied.
Yeah,
that's great stuff.
Like, that was him just losing his shit in a masterful way.
Yeah.
And again, sorry, Jesse, go ahead. I'm
done, man. Go ahead. Feel free. Go for it.
Hang on, before you do, because you imagine, I mean, I don't know how much of like the Clinton White House informed the writing of this show, like the nuts and bolts day to day. So I'm wondering, and I think that was the Clinton administration. You went to university for history, Andrew. So back me up on this. Sorry, I love what the Canadians call it university. Call it college here in America. Higher learning.
It's actually a distinction.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. So it's like college is more for deals with some of your more practical elements. So it's like college is where you go to say your technical schools, your trade schools, and things like that. And then your universities are like your baccalaureate, your masters, and stuff like that.
Okay, I just like to trick you, nipple, but about it. But
what is this, Greg Jackson's gym in the mid 2000s?
I believe it was during the Clinton administration where we had the Black Hawk Down situation.
93, yes.
And I do wonder how much of anyone's actual experience with Clinton during that and having to kind of live through those moments informed the writing of that scene with Bartlett in Columbia.
So that's an interesting question. I mean, I think in general, they
keep
were
going.
talking...
I want to ask Fancy.
Yeah, they were talking to a lot of people, I think, kind of offline from the Clinton White House. I know they weren't having as much kind of direct input, but they were certainly definitely pulling things from the headlines and stuff like that. One thing that always tweaks me about this show is that actually some of the fact checks around when they refer to certain military hardware and things like that just bothers the hell out of me because it's wrong. And it was like wrong when I knew it 20 years ago. When I was just looking through like Jane's military books and stuff like that. So I mean, a lot of it is definitely pulled from the headlines. I think some of it is them writing it from a point of view. There was a little bit of insidery stuff. They actually start to get a lot more of that in later seasons because they actually pull a couple of people from the Gore campaign after he lost to Bush, and they become part of like the writing consulting staff going forward. So I don't know how much one-to-one inside information they were, but they were definitely reading it in terms of off the headlines and then trying to feed into the show. Because I think, you look at this, it's a very 90s show.
Well, I'm going to pat myself on the back again.
There's like malicious stuff, which was a big part of the 90s. There was drug stuff. There was all kinds of general stuff. But go ahead, Mark.
So here's what I asked Fancy. I said, did the Black Hawk Down situation and Clinton's reaction inform the writing of Bartlet's reaction for the Columbia disaster? Yes, Fancy says. The Black Hawk Down incident, the Battle of Mogadishu in 1993, and the President Clinton's response likely influenced the way the West Wing portrayed President Bartlet's reaction to the fictional Columbia hostage crisis in Season 3's episode, Ways and Means. Season 2. Fancy makes mistakes. Here are the key parallels. Failed military operation leading to casualties, public and political fallout, questioning of military engagement in foreign conflicts, political costs, and re-election concerns. Aaron Sorkin often borrowed real-life political events to inform West Wing, and the Black Hawk Down incident likely served as a major historical reference point when crafting how Bartlet dealt with the failed mission in Colombia. So there you go.
Season 4, I know, has a very direct Rwanda reference.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
As it's kind of they kind of take a different course on it, but there's like a very direct Rwanda reference. Even in this season, like, one of the gags about any Aaron Sorkin stuff is that it's an Aaron Sorkin show when the Equatorial Republic of Kundu shows up, because he's the only person that ever references it. Who, by the way, was headed by King T'Chaka, same actor from the first Black Panther movie.
Really?
Super.
Yep.
All right. Those were kind of my talking points. I'm going to do Dorian, Andrew, and then Jesse's going to take me home, baby doll. So any last licks, burning desires, things we didn't cover?
Well, I wanted to really go hard on Two Cathedrals really, really quick.
Sure.
I've talked about even earlier before being raised very Christian, and that chew out of God is just perfect.
Yep.
It's perfect because I love how it upsets people who actually are not Christian. Because in my personal opinion, and again, comments disagree with me, that's fine. The whole idea of God having a perfect plan is the stupidest thing anyone who breathes on this planet can agree with. Because, like, okay, if you're not going to tell me with the plan, well, I work in mysterious ways. Okay, yeah, no, that's the shit my kid tells me when he says he's going to have 3 cookies before,
That's
dinner.
Dinner. That's the kind of thing a psychic says to you to get you to keep paying for psychic readings.
Better example. But I love the first line of it is like, again, coffin's been taken out. They've had this beautiful funeral for John Spencer as Leo's been like, it was a beautiful funeral. She was a great gal. Yeah, Leo, would you give me a few seconds? Have them locked down and everything. Yeah, sure, no problem. And the first words he says to God in this beautiful cathedral, "You're a real son of a bitch." You know that? And again, I will not quote the entire monologue because, again, the audience needs to go watch the show itself. But again, Martin Sheen's acting is, again, you said it before, Mark, chef's kiss.
Yep.
I've talked about President Bartlet's character arc, and this is a huge part of it, in my opinion, too, is just being done.
Mm-hmm.
Again, one drag of the cigarette, which, again, for anyone who smokes, if you light a cigarette, take one drag and toss it to the floor and crush it, we're all running going, no! Hell is wrong with you? But again, that in itself is also a point. However, the ending of that, when he goes back to the White House and the storm's picking up, busts open the door, and now he's having the same conversation with Mrs. Lanningham just kind of reversed. Well, not reversed, but like now they're much older. And the whole, Jed, if you don't want to run, I won't hold it against you. But if you're doing it because you're afraid, well, then I don't even want to know you.
Yeah, great line.
And and please, all of you, and this is not supposed to be an insult, but I know you all have heard this song probably more than I have. It's Dire Straits, right? The song that plays, Brothers in Arms.
Ooh.
I
I don't recognize it as Dire Straits, but anyway, it very well could be because it might have been something I haven't heard.
Let me ask Fancy.
No, Fancy was her name.
And it raining. He's getting poured on. He walks out into and it's the eyes and just how he walks. The decision's been made.
Charlie shows up. Charlie shows up with the coat. He just walks right past.
Yep.
You got it, Dorian. It's Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms.
Fantastic. Okay,
Nice
cool.
job.
Thank you.
Thank Fancy.
One for the kid.
Thank Fancy.
Fancy, you did fantastic.
Very good.
You could be the communications director in my White House. But anyways, no, sorry. And again, I might start tearing up again because like that music playing and the cinematography, the editing, and the whole thing that they'd said in the flashback episodes of Two Cathedrals stuff, where it's like, well, Jed, you've already made up your mind. How do you know? Once you put your hands in your pockets, you've already made up your mind. And so, Mr. President, will this mean that you will be running for a second term? And it cuts to John Spencer. Watch this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dude.
Oh god,
Dude.
I'm going to get Andrew here when I'm doing this. He puts his hands in his pockets and goes,
cut to black.
that's my thoughts, Mark.
Okay. Andrew, any burning desires?
Okay, let's get some burning desires going here. So, yeah, already talked about 17 people. One of my favorite episodes in this entire thing is the Stackhouse filibuster. Just a fantastic kind of everyone from their own point of view thing like that. The scene with Sam getting smacked around by the intern about all the various government reports has a weird prescience about the current moment. I'm going to leave it at that. And the value of some of the work that these people do. Someone is going to the hospital, someone's going to jail. Like I said, there's just so many damn good episodes. Probably one of my other favorites in this one is the episode Ellie, where we get to meet his middle daughter. And I think again that kind of goes to this whole point of we start to strip him back a little bit and we get to find out a little bit more about what Bartlet is actually like. And he's not always he is in many ways like a purely political animal. And on some level, even his wife, who's a doctor, is a highly political animal. And
Can I piggyback on that? One of my favorite moments, because it's about the moments, Jesse. You know it's true.
Oh, yeah.
It's about the moments.
Yep.
One of my favorite moments of season 2 is leading up to the bit where Bartlet gives Charlie Paul Revere's knife.
He gave him the knife.
Yeah.
He want the knife. But like so the whole time
I want the knife.
I want the knife.
Well, I'll explain that in a second. Go ahead, Mark.
So the whole episode, Charlie is like trying to find this carving knife, and he keeps bringing one, and Bartlet keeps finding something wrong with it. And finally, Charlie, in a very polite, very respectful way, says to him, enough. What the fuck with this knife?
What's going on?
And Bartlet says, well, I want to find one to replace the one I'm giving you. What's nice about this moment is Bartlet has no sons, and he treats Charlie not just as a staffer, not just as a handler. What is he, a bear? Sorry, like Lewis Black. The president's handler. Get the meat. Come on. Sorry. He's not just a handler, not just an assistant. He's like a son to Bartlet. And so he bequeaths him Paul Revere's knife. The look on Dulé Hill's face, what a performance. When he realizes what he's being given. I just really
and almost why he's had to go through all this shit to find the perfect knife.
Yeah. I just watched Higher Learning with my kids, and I'll say this again on Thursday. John Singleton, as subtle as a kick to the face.
But goddamn it, it's such a great way.
Oh yeah, I love higher learning, but it is almost a parody.
He kicks us in the face in such a way that we just kind of take the kick, turn back, and go harder, daddy.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like being kicked by a toddler. Like, this is fine. So anyway, so much of that, I mean, there's so much of that movie, and you know, it's meant to be this way, was laden with race and dealing, you know, it's funny, I can link this to also the new Captain America movie, you know, Sam Wilson struggling with how do you represent America if you're a black man with everything this country has done to you and done to black people over, you know, its 200 plus year history. And so there's Charlie, and suddenly the fact that Charlie is, you know, is a proud, intelligent black man, all of that stuff fades away. He's just Bartlet's kind of adopted son.
Yeah.
And he's given a gift, you know, such a wonderful gift. Paul Revere's carving knife. Like, it was one of those moments where, like, Charlie, the Dule Hill in that performance is really recognizing the importance of what's going on here and how, at least for a blink in time, for just a moment, for a hair's breadth, race didn't matter. He's just Charlie, and this man loves him. And it's like, wow, that speaks to me. That sings to my heart.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. And the reason I made the joke about it, he gave him the knife, it again goes back to the official podcast, West Wing Weekly. That became a bit of a meme throughout the course of the show, to the point of they made a T-shirt with like something like the presidential seal, except it had Paul Revere on the front, and one of the phrases on it was, "He gave him the knife." Because that was really, it became a touchstone moment for the entire show.
Dorian wanted to butt in for 1 second. Go ahead, Dorian.
Just with Andrew was talking about the Stackhouse filibuster. There was a very, very important moment to me that I wasn't going to bring up because kind of felt like we were trying to fast track this, but the way that they get him to be able to continue what Stackhouse is doing without having to technically sit down is like, you find a grandfather. You find a grandfather. That, you know, we are the angriest people on the world on the planet. You fuck with our kids, we will come at you.
There's a lot of sugar in that creme brulee. Yes.
So again, I wanted to bring up that is like you twisted so quick to the Paul Revere one. I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
That's why we double back. All right, keep going, Andrew.
Okay, and I mean, maybe what was the other thing? I even love that little bit where it's like Donna raises her hand. No, we don't do that here. And then she gives the solution, and it's like, how'd you know that? Well, Josh likes to tell things, and I have to listen. And just kind of calling out the fact that they're kind of the exposition machine. Anyway, sorry, going back to Ellie for a second. So I think that's one of my favorite episodes. I think and I don't have the actress's name in front of me, but again, the chemistry is so good. And I think when we talk about there's really human moments, there's the point earlier in the episode where he reads the quote, you know, that his daughter gave about, you know, he would never do that. He's not that kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And he reads it in a petulant way. And then when he's having that conversation with the Surgeon General, who's also her goddaughter, he turns around and it's like, my father would never do that. And he now rereads it from the point of view of her being sympathetic to him and her being empathetic. And it's this beautiful moment. And I mean, we still see Ellie quite a few more times throughout the series. And again, the relationship that those two have is something pretty special.
Yes.
It definitely felt strained. Like, yes. That was what going into this, she's the middle daughter. Yep. It definitely feels like there's, you know, something missing, and you could tell Bartlet's upset with what she did and feels that he has to correct her in a certain way. And like, how in the world can you jeopardize all this I gave you, all this that's in place, and you go and do this?
Yep.
And he's admonishing her, and then finally, you know, he starts to realize like this bridge, this relationship needs to be a little bit better. And that's kind of what I was hoping for. And it almost was like, I thought they were going to leave it at that. But when they go to the movie that night, you know, he's trying to, you know, he's finally starting to realize, okay, what she did wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And what can I do to kind of get her to laugh again? And it's not like he comes out and says that either. No, he doesn't come out and say that to her. You know,
you want to bet you could people are going to shush me,
right?
So, but yeah,
he kind of takes off the ceremonial metaphoric ceremonial robes of being a president and becomes the dad again.
The dad.
It's like, It's just like, oh God, I hate you. I know that's your job.
Yeah. Any of the just to keep us going here, any of the scenes with Oliver Platt as Oliver Babish is fantastic. Like,
yeah.
I have a job. I don't want to get into it where every so often I have to start kind of doing logic problems and logic questions, and I hear a little bit of that tone and everything in my head when I start doing it, because it's like that's kind of that level of questioning and things like that you have to do sometimes. The other thing I got to call out really quickly, and we didn't talk about it, but the cooking of the radio host during the during the was it the midterms episode, at the end of the episode where he just cooks her on the Bible. Good freaking God.
I brought that up last episode, and was like, I know it's in season 2.
Yep. I am both somebody who is a lapsed Catholic but did very well on religion in school, so it's like something like that completely appeals to me.
And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, if you're watching this episode and you're like, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to watch The West Wing. All you need to do is put into YouTube President Bartlet versus Bible beaters.
Yep. I want to address that really quickly. As somebody who I think religion is important, I'm not saying you have to be religious. I'm not saying I am, but I do think religion has its place in society and culture.
Yes.
The Bible, most religious scholars of any intellectual heft will tell you the Bible is great for guiding behavior and principle. It is not supposed to be taken literally.
Yep.
And the unfortunate issue with, I think, the far right Christian element of this country is they so badly want you to take a literal translation of the Bible, except that if you read the thing cover to cover, Old Testament to New Testament, Genesis to Revelations, there's so many fucking contradictions. It's the Bible, for lack of a better word, and I don't mean to upset people when I say this, is an anthology book. It is different books edited together to form one thing. And by the way, it's also 2 different books.
And by the way, if they popped into
the St. James Bible,
if they popped in this, if they popped in this late in the episode and didn't see the disclaimer, that's on them.
My point is that scene is illustrative of you cannot take the Bible that literally. One, you've missed the point of the Bible. Any preacher, any religious leader, anyone leading a sermon talks to you about the best things we can derive from the Bible to guide us as people so that we are not living lives that are bereft of meaning. That is what spiritual leaders are supposed to be doing. That is what their interpretations of the Bible and their sermons are supposed to do.
There is an entire class in seminary called Biblical Interpretation.
Right. And it's because you're not supposed to take a word-for-word literal reading of the Bible. You can't possibly, like I said, and that's the point he's trying to make, there's too many contradictions. And by the way, a lot of the stuff doesn't apply to modern society. So it's a great scene. My problem is I don't know how well, I think there's people cheering it on because it kind of comes across as down with Catholics,
just down with Christian people.
Yeah.
Crazy Christian.
We especially like to kick the Catholics in this country. So my point being, I like the scene. I'm glad it's there, and I wanted to take a moment to say I wish people's interpretation of that scene wasn't hooray kick religion, when it's a lot deeper and a lot meaningful than that. I will give a minute or two to respond to what I'm saying because I said a lot, and then we got to keep going.
Yeah.
The one thing I always find funny about that one is I can't even think Catholics and Protestants can do chapter and verse because there's changes between what's probably the New Revised Standard Version, which is what the Catholics use, and the King James Bible. So it's not even the verse references are probably similar, but I mean, I think it's probably that scene's probably come to mean something different from when it was originally written, because the show's never, even aside from Bartlett having his rant at the end of it, they never show him as being lapsed or getting away from it. I mean, I think there's a line coming up in season 4 where it's I was afraid of your Catholicism. It's well, my Catholicism works for me and it works for Abby. Doesn't need to work for you.
I didn't say it before, because I don't want to take this into 3 hours, and I don't know enough of the show to say this for sure. But I do get the sense there's some leftist, progressive, sort of anti-religion leanings in the writing of this show. There's at least a preference. And your description, I haven't seen the episode, so I didn't want to comment on it. But when I think about that scene, and then I think about the way you're describing the finale, it definitely feels like we want to handle this respectfully and as even-handed as we can. But boy, is there a preference against Judeo-Christian religion and not for it. I'm willing to be told I'm wrong about that, but that's my impression.
That's an interesting question. I'd have to think a little bit more about this show. I know they definitely get into it much later in the series with one character in particular.
You want me to ask Fancy?
Sorry?
You want me to ask Fancy?
No, I don't want to spoil it for you.
No, I said, do you want me to ask the AI to give me another answer?
Well, no. I mean, this is also something that I don't know if I want to trust number 6 with or not. Or sorry, maybe I should say Brother Cavill.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry, I'm now making BSG references, but it's an interesting question. Like I said, I mean, I think there's a degree of religion's fine as long as you don't try and foist it upon others. I go back to that line where it's like Bartlet says, yeah, my Catholicism works for me. And then Abby's there and she pipes in what works for me too. But it doesn't have to work for the other person that they're talking to in the reference.
All right, go ahead, Jesse. I
was gonna say,
squirming and chomping at the bit.
I don't get that impression, really. I mean, I understand that religion and politics are going to come and butt heads, but I don't think that there is a purposeful way of trying to show anti-religion in this show. I think in Two Cathedrals, Josiah Bartlet has a relationship with God, and he feels that he's been wronged, and he's decided to have it out.
Sure,
it's not him saying I'm no longer a Catholic. It's more along the lines of like, you and me have to have a talk because I got to figure out what in the world you're doing.
On some level, it's almost from what I understand, and I'm familiar with the tenets of it. I have never, been a practicing Jew or anything like that. But I understand under Judaism, there's a phrase: you can be with God, you can be against God, but you can never be without God.
Sure.
Yeah. So a little bit of that where there is a degree of it's fine to question God. It's almost your duty on some level.
I'm going to throw it to the honorable member of the Missouri Congress to give the final word on this subject, and then unless you had anything else, I'm going to let Jesse take us home. Go ahead, Dorian.
I think I'm done at this point, actually.
No, Mark, I disagree with you, but I see where you're coming from. Absolutely, that the show does come out, seeming like if you were not watching it from the point of view, again, being raised religious is very important to catch some of these, I'm going to call them ground balls, is that it's not hatred of religion, it's exhaustion. Okay. Religion has been pushed so many times of, well, you can't do this because of this, but this is the right thing to do, and later in the book it says this. So it's exhaustion. It is the simple fact that we cannot separate religion from what we know to be right. I've made the joke several times, just in my own real life, that when we all get to heaven, as the old song says, there's just going to be God going there going, that is so not what I meant.
Yeah.
I was taken out of context.
Fine. Next time when I redo this Earth thing and humans again, I'll come down and be like, all right, sit down. Yeah, I know I'm really bright. Just, put some sunglasses on. Here we go. But in all seriousness, I understand where you're coming from, and it's not trying to slap one side or the other. You always have to write what you know. If you were a Republican and you were, Aaron Sorkin, this show would have been completely different than the way it is. You write what you know. Andrew, I think it was Andrew's. No, Mark, it was you again who said he writes from northeast.
No, that was Andrew.
That was Andrew. Okay, yeah. I was right the first time. And it's, I love that scene partially because of how I was raised in religion. I have my own issues with God, but he and I work that out on a daily basis, and we can deal with that. I told Michael Kettner I was going to do this, just for the line. My favorite line out of that whole scene is, my chief of staff, Michael Kettner, refuses to not work on the Sabbath. Now, Exodus 25:16 clearly states he should be put to death. Am I morally obligated to kill him myself, or is it okay to call the police? And again, it's stuff like that, like you were talking about, Mark, that it's the... I'm shocked that it has not really come up in the show. The separation of church and state. There are things that are right, and the Bible puts them forth as right. The Old Testament is a history book of like, this is where we came from. Don't fucking do this again. See where it got us.
This reminds me of Civil War from last year. I became a photojournalist to tell people don't do this, and here we are doing it
again. And again, the New Testament is all about...
so true right now.
Right. Poor Andrew's just like banging his head. It's like, why?
But no, okay, you'll be part of the United States soon enough.
Oh, jeez.
Right.
Don't go there.
I'm wrapping this thought up. But it's not trying to strike one side or the other. It's the exhaustion that people who, not faith, but religion, is their concrete basis. Okay. It's the there's an old saying, God wrote it, I believe it, and that settles it. And I forgive me for using the Southern accents on that one, Jesse. And now I hear the doors getting kicked in. I brought that one on myself.
Don't worry, nobody's working there anymore anyway.
But it's that whole idea of there is no interpretation. It just simply is what it says, which I think is what that episode is really attacking. It's like, can I sell my daughter into slavery? Can I kill my chief of staff? Can I, burn my mother alive in a small family gathering? It's the exhaustion of hardcore, crush your face religion, not faith religion. Faith is beautiful because the faith in something is what gives us strength to go forward. Religion is something we tie ourselves down to, so it makes us look fancy when we do something that should be simple and beautiful.
All right. But well said, Dorian. For the sake of time, I'm not going to rebut any of that, though I do have thoughts. Speaking of thoughts and fancy, Jesse, take me home, baby doll.
Oh, my goodness. All right, well, here we go. Quick hits. Okay. I took my notes throughout watching the season, and I'm picking one thing from each episode.
Is it the first 9 Ainsley's butt? 30 seconds ago, we were having a great debate about religion, and back to girls' asses we go.
Episode 1.
Story at point in season 3.
Oh boy,
my man.
He knows what I'm talking about.
Oh my. All right, episode 1. Is that Saz Pataki in the press there? Jane Lynch apparently making a show there. Saz Pataki's her character from Only Murders in the Building. Yep. Episode 2, Margaret practicing the president's signature.
I think it's a coup d'etat.
How to do the president's signature.
Sorry, Leo's fucking line. I think it's a coup d'etat. Perfect.
Isn't there a line? I can't remember if it's this season. Yeah, no, it might have been the one with the nuclear test where it's like Marbury walks in. It's like, oh yes, Leo, your assistant is looking absolutely buxom. Thank you. Just hear off camera. Margaret has just win the entire series.
She is enjoyable every time she pops in there. Episode 3, the president's obsession with Elliot Rouse at the Board of Education polling at 46%, which was just another little sliver into Bartlet's character.
I ran against him. I beat him.
He's just obsessed with it. Like, he's obsessed. And episode 4 was the African crisis that they were having.
Yes.
And I just read, I should say, a article popped up right before that episode hit about Bush's AIDS policy being like one of the greatest things ever.
Yep.
And here it was where I was watching that episode just after I saw that article pop up.
That came up a little while ago on another podcast where it's like George W. Bush put in this minor policy regarding AIDS, and it's had this massive impact on the fight against that entire disease. So I mean, we don't talk about nearly as much as we used to, but that's also because
it's far more fun to give the man shit.
Yes.
But
it's like one of those things where it's like
the old Shakespeare line: "The evil men do lives after them; the good is often tarred with their bones."
And Bruce is an honorable man.
Yes.
Episode 5, 01 Take Bartlett.
Yep. I'm surprised you pulled that specific line from that episode. I can think of so many other ones.
Yeah,
there's the government.
Him running away from the kids because he wants to go bang his wife is the most Bartlett thing ever.
I wrote this down in that same episode. I wrote, I hate plutonium, but I don't remember anything about that. So you guys, I don't know if that even registers for you guys, but I find it strange. Episode 6, Lame Duck Congress, carpal tunnel. Leo says type slower. Leo's like, just type slower. Well, can't you just type slower?
And then he walks in and Margaret's doing one of these deals.
She's like, I'm just typing slower.
Leo's like ready to fucking pimp slap her.
We also get a throwback in episodes. I say throwback, but we get reminded about Leo and his alcoholism. He gets served, I think, his divorce papers in episode 7, and we're kind of worried about him falling off the wagon, and he's trying to reassure everybody, no, I'm fine. Episode 8, you guys already talked about it. Bartlett and his cutting knives. I mean, my gosh. Episode 9, though, still food related. Bartlett don't like green beans. He does not like green beans. Episode 10, don't yell at the president. Please, Josh, for the love of Pete, do not yell at the president. Episode 11, the leadership breakfast. Donna's panties.
Okay, that is an actual story that happened to a cast member.
Did it really?
Yep, I can't remember who. My gosh. It's actually something that actually happened to a cast member, and that's where that got inspired from.
It was Allison Janney.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it was Allison Janney. Sorry.
Wow. So let
on the West Wing Weekly. So
let the listeners know what happened. I think it was at some kind of a dinner or something, and the panties fell out of her leg.
There's what the setup to that is. There's a columnist who Leo had said something unfavorable about her shoes. This was a big deal, and they needed to fix it. They wanted to send Sam to go fix it.
Of errors.
And he was like, and so he goes, and then he gets the wrong stand, Kyrgyzstan or Kazakhstan.
Yes.
One of them has nuclear weapons, and one of them has a lot of dirt. And he he screws up which one is which. So then they send Donna to go correct that issue, and that's what generates the panties.
Yes, right. They fell out right in front of Karen Cahill, and she mailed them back to her. It was a great episode. Episode 12, missed it by 137 miles.
I'm not kidding when I can tell you I could talk an hour about like missile defense and all of that. And just like the arguments, pros and cons, but I love that.
Thumbs up to this podcast to get the director's cut, where Mark does actually go for an hour on missile defense.
Did you like my rant about religion? Wait till you hear my thoughts about missile defense.
Okay, I have a book recommendation for you later, but we're gonna move on forward.
Episode 13. So much focus on trying to sound competent for U.S. citizens. It doesn't seem like that's much of a concern anymore. I mean, a lot of what is going on in this show is like everybody's worried about the public's perception of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't get that feeling that that's happening in 2025. That's just me. I'm certain that, but you want to look good for a certain sect of people now. Anyway, my starred comment of this was I actually had just watched Lowe. Have any of you guys watched Lowe on Netflix with Allison Janney in it?
Not yet.
She plaplays a.
It is on my list. I have not, unfortunately, gotten the chance. I think I know where you're going, but go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say we watched it, and I thought it wasn't horrible. It wasn't the greatest movie, but it was. If you remember, was it Sifu or the oh my goodness, the guy that goes around killing Nazis? It wasn't as violent as that, but anyway, she plays like a spy kind of lady. It's pretty good. Anyway, if you get a chance, I mean, this came out in 2024, I think, or 2023, something around there. Get a chance, watch it. It's not bad. Episode 14, how can these people operate with such little sleep? I've already talked about that. That's just unreal. So, I mean, you watch these people leave and go at the early wee hours of the morning and come back.
Coffee, lots and lots of coffee.
Sam's sleeping there. That's another thing. Sam's arc this season. I think one of the things that stuck out to me was that episode where he has to deal with understanding that his father was having an affair. Yep. That was pretty. That impacted me a little bit. Episode 15 with Ellie. My favorite quote. He's going to land an hour before he took off. How is not a bigger story than the Surgeon General? It's a good one.
As somebody who just did some hopping between several time zones, I appreciate that.
Dude, yeah, that's crazy. Episode 16, I wish I did not get the name of this organization, but I think it's Social Equality for Cartographers.
Oh, God, that's a great moment.
Yeah.
And then them laying it out, like showing you like this is actually what it looks like. And the reason why it doesn't is because of perception, which was good. Episode 7
blocks anybody?
Episode 17, one of my favorite quotes of the season. Would you mind if I provided you some notes? Would you mind if I shoved them up your ass? That's a good one. Episode 18, 17 people. This is where my wife looked at me and said that she wants Josh and Donna to get it on and get it over with because the tension is just like
she's got a while to wait.
You could cut the tension between the sexual tension between these two with a fucking chainsaw.
No kidding. Episode 19 has a quote that I don't think aged very well, and I don't think I got this exactly right, but this is Josh, and he says, "The amount of people I have to ask permission from, there's really something to be said about fascism." But we also. But then we find out that we also find out in that same episode that Donna framed Roger Rabbit. Just to let everybody know that happened.
Super.
That was the questioning episode.
Yeah,
I saw Lizzie Borden communing with the devil.
Oh man. Episode 20, poor Donna doesn't know that they get a fax every other week about something falling out of the sky. So she thinks it's like really important. She's going around trying to get everybody's attention. And it turns out that, that happens every other week. Episode 21, I mean, my goodness, right at the end, it just freaking breaks your heart when you find out that Mrs. Lanningham has died. Oh, it's rough.
Charlie's read on that one is so interesting because it's like you can tell he's sad, but it's also you can tell in his life he's dealt with that so much that there's a
it's not a boing flip, but it's still like we got the armor for this.
Yeah, exactly. He's used to it on some level, and he's inoculated against it to some level, but you can also tell there's that heartbreak.
He's gonna like mourn it later.
Yeah,
right. And I mean, episode 22, I don't know much what else I could say that we haven't already said. It's just so him yelling at God, the storm that's there, it all kind of evokes that like Forrest Gump, situation where Lieutenant Dan has the same thing. He sits out there and he just screams at God as this hurricane pounds them. That's kind of what it reminded me of. But all in all, man, I had a great time. I cannot wait to get into season 3. Like I said, I watched episode 0, I think is what it came up as on the old Plex there. But it's like in between, and we're immediately dealing with what I was talking to you guys about last session. Like, are we going to be talking about the September 11th attacks? Because this season ends before that happens, and then season 3 picks up after like 1 month after it happens.
Mr. Redlich, I'd like to make a suggestion, and this could be a special episode if necessary. I know we need to attack season 3 in its wholeness like we've done this one, but what if we did just a 1 hour piece on the Ishmael episode, and just kind of talked about that as even if we don't show that episode until September 11th of 2025, as a salute to those who lost their lives in that attack. We could then fully break that down slowly. Again, if I'm outvoted, that's fine. I think that's a really important episode for the entire.
It really is. I mean, when I was watching it today, it's it's obviously us trying to deal with what happened and
Yeah.
trying to explain what
I'm
happened.
open to it. Schedule permitting, and Jesse hasn't talked about this yet, and I don't want to put Jesse's business in the street, but Jesse's time with us may be limited. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a very good possibility. Doesn't mean you guys can't soldier forth.
no, I won't do this without you.
Don't you leave on me.
I can't quit you, Jesse.
It's the last thing I want to do is me to
Don't let
hold
go,
this up.
Jesse. Don't let go. Fuck, I've heard my heart will go on way too much in the past 7 days.
You guys are gonna die an old podcast, warm in your beds.
All right, you good, Jesse?
I'm good. That was everything. I appreciate you giving me the time.
Absolutely. Yes, time to talk on a podcast. Yeah, I understand. Sorry, I was thinking about something earlier today, and Dave telling my daughter the first time when we did the Dragon Slayer podcast, like, Jesse, Lily, you're gonna have to speak up. One thing about your father's podcast is this is a giant fight for time. Like, ouch, Dave. God, how many years ago was that now? Well, folks, thank you for joining us on Nostalgia R Us. The West Wing, season 2 podcast. Tomorrow we are talking Captain America: Brave New World. Meh. And then Thursday is Black History Month. Rolls on. We are doing a John Singleton focus. We are looking at poetic justice, higher learning, and Baby Boy. Hey, you know what's fun? Talk to your children, specifically your 10 to 14-year-old children, about where the cultural phenomenon of black guys sucking on pacifiers came from, and watch your son pull his hair out. This was my experience today on the way to the movie theater.
This is what pays the bills, folks.
Last week we looked at movies. We looked at Love Hurts and on Damn You Hollywood, and then on Thursday our Black History show was picked by Jason. We looked at basketball movies, Above the Rim, Coach Carter, and He Got Game. Andrew, go ahead and do your plugs.
All right, I train at Esteem and Havoc Martial Arts here in Calgary. You can go find us on all of the current social media sites and everything like that. I know my instructor Jay Cooper is just about to revive a new iteration of his Reality Check series on YouTube, so go check that out if you're interested in some analysis of some real kind of we'll call them kind of self-defense situations online. Finally, I will end with a couple of book recommendations. One for you, Mark, The Bomb by Fred Kaplan. You'll rather enjoy that one. It's pretty esoteric.
I'm vaguely aware of that one. I haven't
good.
read it, but I want to say, like, at the time that I was going to bookstores a lot and looking at that sort of thing, I remember seeing that one.
That one's a good one. It's kind of a president by president breakdown of nuclear policy.
Okay.
So you'll find it, and if anything, just read it only so you can see the chapter of the chapter of the book that's dedicated to Obama. It has one of the best all-time quotes that should probably have ended up in this show at some point.
I can't remember which person I said this to about, like, the definition of an actual nerd. That's the definition of an actual word. Some light reading about presidents and their nuclear policy.
Dude, I brought a 500-page history book on vacation with me. This is not unusual for me. My nerd bona fides are pretty much established.
This is what I'm saying.
Everyone,
the fact that you watch, gay Star Wars shows, and I mean gay with an E, it doesn't make you a nerd. Reading a 500-page book on the history of nuclear policy, that makes you a nerd, and I am a proud one. Speaking of proud nerds, Dorian.
I was about to say, go read The Fifth Risk by Michael Lewis. Please.
Go read anything by Michael Lewis. My God. That's the guy that brought us the Big Short and Moneyball and a whole bunch of other great shit. Michael Lewis is fantastic.
Go read The Fifth Risk just right now, just because it's very, very important.
Okay. Speaking of very, very important, POTUS, tell us where you're running next.
2028 will be me and Michael Kettner running for president. And we've already worked out our campaign slogan. We're ready to believe you.
Nice. I like that.
See,
Sounds
it
familiar.
works. Like Mark's
Sounds
shaking his
familiar.
hand, Andrew's clapping, and it's
Because I'm just waiting for my son to finish his schooling and go, get his graduate degrees, so that way he can run for president when he's 35 under the platform: a chicken in every pot and a cocaine in every bear.
No, Mark, we don't even have to worry about this because once I win in 2028, I'm going to have him as my body man, like Charlie. So he's in the White House. He's already used to how things work.
Getting used to it,
Good.
right.
Guys,
We're just changing it work.
I have a better idea. Abortions for some, tiny American flags for others.
Let's talk more when this is over. It's a G2 summit. It's just America and Canada talking and working shit out. But no, it saddens me to say, for those of you who watch the show and are fans of me, if there are any fans of me, that Frankie Pictures is sadly going to have to go down. It's we've gotten scammed a lot. So for all the other videographers and filmmakers out there that are young, old, I don't care who you are, contracts every time, planning every time, you can get screwed on a lot of things. I'm not trying to bring the end of the podcast down, but the new thing is that we are putting up a new company, and it's actually being run by someone else who has a lot more business experience, is a lot older than I am, and wiser. So the glasses were all just fake, guys. So I am not actually that wise. But so we have actually several 3-minute short films called the 3-Minute Dash that are going to be coming out over the next couple of months. And I don't want to step over anything, but I want to whisper into the winds that Mr. Radlich and I have actually been talking about possibly making a movie together. And I underline possibly because there's a whole lot of things go into it. But for those of you who are fans of the show, Mr. Radlich has said many times that he wants to be a producer. And I think we got something for him. So
I call fight choreographer.
You're hired. That's where Mark goes, wait a minute, I'm the producer. I hire people. Nope. Director. POTUS, I win.
I'm fine with this. I'm just fast forwarding to when, much like the fight choreographer got to direct his own movie, Love Hurts, and we saw how that turned out. When Andrew, in a few years from now, gets to direct his first movie.
A fight choreographer directed his own movie with John Wick, and that worked out perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. Chad Stahelski was a stunt guy.
I'm thinking it's gonna be like Casey Jones, the movie from the Ninja Turtles. He's just running around beating people with a hockey stick.
I love it. I'm there
because you're Canadian. You get it?
Yeah, I'll put money into this.
All right.
Where's my checkbook?
Oh, by the way, I didn't get to do it earlier, but if we're referencing Family Guy lines, you're cash poor.
All right. Speaking of cash poor, Jesse, show us where you pissed from.
Oh, my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow on the Source Material Comics feed, you can hear myself and Mark Radlich get together and discuss Vroom Vroom. That's right. Badman Sid is making his return. We're heading to Charming, and we're going to be talking Sons of Anarchy Volume 5. This is, I think, the Dylan Munson saga. I feel like I've got that wrong, but anyway, Bobby's nephew. Bobby's nephew. Remember that one, Mark? Anyway, he don't remember that one.
Smile and wave, boy.
He was there and recorded, but I don't think he remembers right now.
Well, it was about a year ago, so.
Anyway, you can check that out. That's 3 or 4 issues of Sons of Anarchy from Boom Studios. We get together and talk about that. And speaking of mental health, myself and Evan Bevins and Chris Armstrong got together and recorded last night on a future episode here. I think it's going to be popping up on the 24th of February. X Factor 87 for Unspoken Issues, which was basically the X Factor team. If you look at the cover, you think they're getting ready to just annihilate some guy who's sitting in a chair. And it turns out it's Doc Samson, and he's actually sitting every single one of them down and having a session with them and talking about some of the crazy stuff that superheroes have to deal with. And it's really, really interesting. Peter David does a fantastic job of breaking down and making you understand why Quicksilver is the way that he is. Strong Guy, Guido, characters that you may not have heard of, but you can see that they have experienced some trauma in the past. And
link to that, because that actually sounds really, really interesting.
It was actually, we threw a poll up and that was the winner, but we had a couple other ones on there. Peter David's an issue of Peter David's Hulk was on there, and a Doom Patrol Crazy Jane issue as well, but didn't make the cut. So we talked X Factor 87. I will definitely send you a link, but that is all that I have. Thank you very much.
Real quick, I forgot to mention this. Evan and I finally got our corrective measures episode up. We looked at the book from Arcana Publishing, very, very independent studio. And then they actually worked on this movie adaptation of it with Michael Rooker and a almost dead Bruce Willis. So that's fun.
Ooh.
Evan's always fun to work with. We had a fun show talking about the book and the movie. Check it out. It's now up on the feed. Alrighty. For the President of these United States of America, Dorian Price. For the Prime Minister of Canada, Andrew Graham. And for rebel-rousing rebeler of the Appalachia States, Jesse Starcher, I'm got to go put laundry away. Be well, be safe, and behave.